The moment that women in Republican circles try to get real power, that's when the old boys club reminds them, you know, that time to sit down and shut up, you little lady. That's, you know, the essential message. Michelle Goldberg wrote a great piece for the New York Times today, basically calling this out, pointing this out, and I want to, you know, credit her for that. Pointing out that the modern Republican Party is slipping into open, unapologetic misogyny. And Republican congresswomen are starting to say the quiet part out loud. I mean, I'm talking about Nancy Mace, and who also had a piece in the New York Times, or maybe it was the Washington Post. I believe it was yesterday. It might have been the day before. Basically saying that leadership doesn't want to hear from her, that it's an old boys club. I mean, they're really getting fed up with this. Michelle Goldberg, in her piece for the New York Times today, points out that Phyllis Schlafly started out, and Phyllis Schlafly, by the way, was a regular on this program. She'd been on this program, you know, probably well over a dozen times over the years, and she and I would politely debate policy. You know, she was a conservative, I'm a liberal. We debated health care, we debated gay rights, we debated gay marriage, we debated a whole bunch of things. But anyhow, Phyllis Schlafly used to claim that you know, misogyny was over, that women had equal rights, you know, that the feminist movement of the 70s, the late 60s, early 70s was successful. And one time she had a debate with a feminist, I forget who it was, and she ended up, who pointed out to her that had she tried to get, and she had at one point apparently tried to get a job in the Defense Department, and she didn't get it, a man got it, and she acknowledged that, yeah, it was because she was a woman, she didn't get the job. But we're seeing the same thing. In the Republican Party, ambitious women can rise throughout the ranks in the party, but they're expected to always defer to the men. There is no equivalent of Nancy Pelosi or Hillary Clinton in the Republican Party. And even women who have considerable power, I mean, you know, like United States senators like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, are just routinely dissed by the men around them or ignored. The Republican women in the House are saying that Mike Johnson won't listen to them, won't engage with them, won't take them seriously. This was Nancy Mace's argument. They also, they say that they drove efforts to hold a Republican, the women drove efforts to hold a Republican colleague accountable for revenge porn threats. The men were fine with it, or not fine with it, but they didn't want to go down that road. The bigger story is that the conservative anti-woman movement is fashionable again. Misogyny is again fashionable in conservative and Republican circles. I mean, you know, they claim to be outraged about anti-Semitism, right? Oh yeah, let's you know, arrest a bunch of college students for saying things about Hamas or Israel or whatever and deport them. But misogyny, not a problem. You know, misogyny is a, you know, $6 word for hatred of women, basically. It is, you now have Republicans who are coming right out and saying, or Republican funders, billionaires who fund Republicans, coming right out and saying that the, you know, the biggest mistake America made was letting women vote. That's when the Republic became, you know, began to unravel. That's when the liberal stuff started happening. And that it's time to do away with the right of women to vote, the 19th Amendment. You also have conservative figures saying that workplace discrimination against women should be legal. You have Trump, you know, basically embracing women, I don't mean physically, allowing women to work with him if, you know, in a public role, if they are attractive. He wants pretty blondes, you know, Pam Bondi's and Carolyn Levitt's. But, you know, that's it. They have to be deferential. I mean, Carolyn Levitt yesterday was, you know, from the White House press room was just going off on how the Republicans aren't praising Trump enough. There's a great piece about it over on Raw Story right now. It's just crazy. The moment that women in Republican circles try to get real power, that's when the old boys club reminds them, you know, that time to sit down and shut up, you little lady. That's, you know, the essential message. And so, you know, we can't allow this to be normalized. I mean, it's just wrong.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan. This is from Chapter 1, The Power of Data. In November 2017, my Apple MacBook Pro was stolen. It happened on the island of Ibiza, where I was visiting my friend, a documentary filmmaker. We were thinking of making a series of short films to illustrate innovative uses of new technology around the world. We sat together writing down examples of technological innovation, subversion, and creativity we'd already witnessed. We discussed themes I explore in this book, such as surveillance, the gig economy, and the future of work, artificial intelligence, and cryptocurrencies. After uploading our ideas to Google's cloud-based storage platform, Google Drive, we took a short break, locking our laptops in the trunk of our rented car. When we returned, both laptops were gone. Although upset, I was also relieved. I'd be able to recover most of my data because almost all of it was in the cloud. That was what I signed on to when I stored my files with Google as well as with Apple, Microsoft, and Dropbox. But in the bargain, I'd allowed them to profit from my data. It dawned on me, given the terms of service I'd agreed to, that the value of the data of my data to the storage companies was far greater than the value of my laptop to the thief. How many of us are fully aware that companies providing us with cloud storage have ways to monetize our data? They use targeted advertising, for instance, and charge fees once we get hooked on the security and peace of mind that their free services offer. We put faith in these companies to store our files securely, but our private information may no longer remain private if, let's say, the government asks to search through our data. It's also not private because all this data is surveilled, computed, and often manipulated in mysterious ways to influence and shape our behaviors as these corporations see fit. By creating accounts with these companies, we give them access to ourselves. So when we consent to privacy policies, in reality, we're signing on to systems of surveillance never before seen in human history, and we do so without being included or consulted. By desiring to keep our data accessible and recoverable, we lock ourselves into using their services. As I thought about getting my files back in Ibiza, I wondered, does access to my own property have to come with such strings attached? In my relationship to Apple, I find the strings impossible to untie. By purchasing an Apple laptop, I had unwittingly transformed from a customer into a part of the company's product line. I had provided Apple with private data and trusted Apple to protect it. Now, to retrieve that data, I had to purchase a new laptop with Apple-owned peripherals and devices. So I caught the next flight to Madrid. I then took the train to the city's Apple store located in Puerto del Sol. In many ways, this central plaza still serves in its centuries-old role as a landmark and gathering place for the entire Spanish nation, a point from which numerous roads emanate. With its distinctive aesthetic and its strategic placement in a civic space, The Apple Store stood out among the adjacent parliamentary and government buildings as if the global brand were more powerful than Spain itself. The day I was there, more people entered and left the Apple Store than passed through the doors of my neighboring building. In 2017, Apple, a private corporation worth more than $1 trillion, actually began to conceptualize its retail stores as town squares, thereby branding itself an integral part of our everyday lives. Other big technology corporations describe themselves in similar terms. Facebook's CEO and founder Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, refers to the company as a social infrastructure for the global community. So what we have in the digital world are privately owned public spheres. They're branded as public, civic, and virtuous, but in reality are dominated by a single logic, extending profitability and economic value. How can these companies' interests be the same as the public interest? Like many other large corporations, Apple is shareholder-owned and therefore primarily accountable to its investors and executives, rather than to its employees, customers, or the general public. I had not begun to unpack the meaning of all this until I realized how monumental the Puerto del Sol Apple Store actually was, as an icon and a structure. As I walked into the store, an Apple employee invited me to purchase a new machine, log onto my iCloud account, and retrieve from Apple Cloud Storage the data that I lost from my stolen laptop. These transactions, completed in less than an hour, were simple and efficient. My data was extraterritorial, easily retrievable in Spain, and likely would be in most other countries. Purchasing a new laptop and getting my data back supported Apple's economic model. National borders were no threat or hindrance. The same was true with retrieving data I had stored on other corporate cloud servers managed by Google and Dropbox. In technology circles, this saying has made the rounds. If you're not the customer, then you're the product. Many of today's technologies come to us for free, but in return, our personal lives come for free to these technologies. But they are accessible for the company's profit and gain. Yes, when we search Google, we look for information, but do we realize that Google is also searching us? Users, and it goes on from there. So the book is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, it's a brand new week. Top of the Monday to you. How many democracies must fall before we admit that Trump and Putin want the same outcome? Let's get to this. We'll get to that in just a minute. Also, Trump is savagely going after Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, with criminal charges, just as the economy is starting to tank. Will Trump's bullying change Powell's behavior or produce an economic crash? Is Trump doing this because he knows that he's crippled the economy and this is his way of setting Jerome Powell up to take the blame for it? We'll get to that in a minute, too. And a world-famous historian explains the real reason why Jonathan Ross shot Nicole Good to death. We'll talk about all those things in the first hour. In the second hour, our one guest today, Christopher Armitage, is going to drop by. How extrajudicial killing became legal. Also, he's in Minneapolis, has been for a couple days, reporting from there. We'll get an update. And the Philadelphia police chief has declared war on ICE. We should all be supporting her. I'll share a clip of that with you. Also, it wasn't Maduro or even Chavez who kicked the oil companies out of Venezuela. You know, Trump got all these guys together and said, hey, you want to go back into Venezuela? And they were, you know, the Exxon CEO was kind of skeptical. And so this morning Trump says, well, maybe we won't even let them in. But who kicked him out in the first place? Trump was behaving like it was, you know, Chavez or Maduro. No, it was Donald Trump who kicked the oil companies out in his last term. We'll get to that in the second hour, too. In the third hour of our program, how the U.S. Army used to talk about fascism. And Republicans are finally pushing back against Donald Trump's cuts to science budgets. And this is a big deal. We'll talk about that in the third hour also. So a lot going on today. My op-ed, my daily take over at HartmannReport.com is titled, How Many Democracies Must Fall Before We Admit Trump and Putin Want the Same Outcome? And, you know, this past week, Donald Trump has demanded that the Pentagon produce an invasion plan for Greenland. I mean, that would have world-changing consequences, right? To the benefit of Putin and the detriment of Europe, democracy around the world, and the United States. And then he followed that up by suggesting that Marco Rubio should become the next president of Cuba, you know, the same way that Putin had promised that to his generals and his oligarchs that they could run Ukraine once he took it over. I mean, step by step, it appears that Donald Trump is trying to turn America into Russia. We saw the latest, most gruesome example of that this weekend when Kristi Noem hit the TV, you know, the Sunday show circuit to claim that Nicole Good is a domestic terrorist, and Jonathan Ross, the man who murdered her, was doing what he was trained to do. What, shoot pedestrians, or shoot civilians, American citizens in the face? I mean, it's becoming increasingly clear to Americans that Trump is trying to use his ICE as his own private version of the SS, the Schutzstaffel, an unchallengeable police force loyal to him rather than the law, whose job is to terrify and pacify the population. So they won't object to having their pockets picked by Trump and his billionaire oligarch buddies, and they won't object to having their freedom taken by this neo-fascist state he's trying to create. And these threats against Greenland, they're designed to break up NATO, which is exactly what Putin wants. I mean, I believe that both Putin and Trump want democracy to fail around the world, in the United States. Putin has already taken down democracy in Russia. I mean, they had a democracy for about a decade, an actual functioning democracy, and Putin took it down. And now Trump is following the exact same playbook here. Sue the media and have your billionaire oligarch buddies take it over and turn it into Fox News, turn it into something that just praises you all the time. Pack the courts with judges who rule up for you no matter what. And we're seeing this now, like over 90% of the appeals court judges who Trump put into place are consistently voting for Trump, even when the lower courts, you know, clearly identify crimes that are being committed. So I think it's, you know, it's the same thing. I used to think that Trump was doing what he was doing because Putin told him to. And that the reason why he was doing this was because Putin was either blackmailing him, you know, from the time that he was in Russia with his, you know, his beauty pageant, or, you know, maybe Putin got access to the Epstein tapes. Epstein was actually well connected to Russia and Russian intelligence. Or, you know, the PP tape, you know, from the Steele dossier, who knows? But I figured either he was being blackmailed by Putin, or Putin was dangling a carrot in front of him, you know, hey, you know, if you're nice to me, I'll give you $1 billion hotel in Moscow and you can make a fortune. You can even live here. And maybe both are true. But increasingly now, I've come to the conclusion that it's not, that Trump isn't doing this because he's being blackmailed or because he has an economic opportunity. He's doing it because he thinks the same way Putin does. These are both men who had miserable childhoods. They are both, in my opinion, psychopaths. They seem to delight when people die. They delight in the killing of other people, whether it's you know, drug boats off the coast of Venezuela for Trump, or whether it's, you know, dissidents in the case of Putin. Well, now dissidents too. You had a dissident who was shot in the face in Minneapolis, and Donald Trump is praising that. He loves it when people die. This is a you know, and he had this, you know, miserable, tortured childhood with a psychopath father, as did Putin. And it's not just these two. I mean, this is, you know, they get high by terrorizing people with their secret police and militia, both Trump and Putin. They delight killing people via their militaries. They both hate and fear an open and free press or any sort of legislative or judicial body that might try to constrain them. And they both corruptly made billions off their positions of power. Putin's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Trump has doubled his net worth in 12 months. Other dictators throughout history shared these same characteristics. Hitler was an abused and unwanted child. Saddam Hussein was. Benito Mussolini was. Francisco Franco was. They were all the children of violent alcoholic fathers. Historian Brian Junkemeyer says, quote, Stalin's father was so violent that on more than one occasion he physically abused Stalin to the point where he'd have blood in his urine for days. Now, this is not to say that, abused children grow up to be monsters, but in some cases that happens, and that's certainly what happened with these men. And, most Americans, not being psychopaths who survived cruel childhoods, just don't even understand or can't identify with these impulses. But it's a safe bet that a lot of the people who are signing up for ICE are just like this. I mean, it wasn't until Nicole Good told Jonathan Ross that she wasn't mad at him and she was leaving. In other words, she took the power position in that interaction. She's like, I'm in charge here. I'm not even mad at you. I can leave. That, for abusive husbands, when the wife finally declares that she's leaving, that's typically the moment when the wife is killed. I mean, this is classic. And here's Nicole Good basically saying to this man, to Jonathan Ross, I'm in charge here and I'm leaving and you can't control me. And at that point, he murders her, which is what abusive husbands do. I mean, obviously they had no relationship, but you get the point. Robert Caro once noted, power doesn't corrupt, power reveals. He says, when a man is climbing, when he needs votes, when he needs allies, he's careful. But when he has power, he no longer needs to be careful, and then you see who he really is. Or as Lord Acton famously said back in 1887, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Donald Trump and the billionaires that he surrounds himself with, there are 13 in his cabinet. There's over 100 billionaires who are major donors to his campaigns. And the police state toadies, like Miller, Noem, Vance, Patel, Holman, Bovino, et cetera, based on observable actions, behaviors, and statements, almost universally oppose democracy. They're trying to normalize turning America into an oligarchy. And the danger of that is that oligarchies are unstable forms of government. Oligarchies rarely last more than a couple of generations because the people rise up. And when the people rise up, the power structure is confronted with two choices. They can crush that uprising with an iron boot, as Putin did, or they can just go back to being oligarchs and stop involving themselves in politics, which is what happened in the United States in the 1930s. When FDR took on the oligarchs, they just said, okay, screw it, we're just going to go back to making money. And they stayed that way until 1981. So here we have this, real crisis. We're at this fork in the road right now. This is quite literally a battle over whether the United States remains a democratic republic, a constitutional republic, or becomes another cautionary tale that future generations look back on and go, how did that happen? How could we have let that happen? The choice is still ours, at least for the moment. So please get involved. History makes one thing clear. Once the jackboot is fully laced, it rarely comes off without blood. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour. Stick around. And welcome back. Jerry in Venice, California. Hey, Jerry, what's on your mind today?
We finally published something in the Venice Beachhead. We call it the Breakout. It's about the VA up here on Christmas Day, I call it National Propaganda Radio, had on that the stay that they had on the VA at the second time that a federal judge threw them off the VA, all these leases in L.A., they got a stay, and now it's went to circuit court, and it's out. It's back to home for veterans, the 1888 deed.
What's the it here? I don't understand what the core of this is, Jerry. What is it that you're talking about? What happened?
Well, we're going to get the VA back. The veterans that owned it.
The VA was taken away?
Yeah, it was leased out. They had, somebody was telling me about 9 9-year leases. Well, this
Are you talking the building, or are you talking the agency itself?
Talking about the 300 acres.
Uh-huh, I see.
The only thing that's on the deed that the people gave it to us, I put out this proclamation for 10 years in Santa Monica for us about the veterans and the family that gave us the property in the deed we trust, and all the deed says is home for veterans.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, okay. That was a couple of years back.
Yeah, well, Trump made a day out of it.
Yeah.
These homeless veterans, these poor homeless veterans.
Right.
Well, for years they tried to get in, and finally the L.A. Times reporter that followed the first leases in about 2011, he said on public radio, the last thing he said was, Brentwood and Westwood don't want them, but here they come.
All right, this was NIMBYism.
Yeah, it was just absolute. You know, these guys used to hang on the front gate for years trying to get in.
Yeah.
But when they all showed up on the Brentwood side of the VA, the homeless in this, when this big homeless encounter came, and they finally had to let them in.
So are the homeless vets now going to have a place to go?
Yeah, well, they're there, but hey, Tom, some of these guys are really twisted. There was one building there from after World War I that had screens on the windows, big building, and the screens weren't to keep the bugs out. They were really messed up after the gas and all that. I don't know the whole. Somebody needs to tell this story about those buildings.
Yeah.
They're the old hospital buildings on the north side. The south side's all new. And that was, Obama started putting solar panels on the parking and rebuilding some of the buildings because the lease, the stay said, or the first lease that they threw out said home for veterans. And Obama was rebuilding some of the buildings. But this time is crazy. They're spending so much money up there, you would think they was building Las Vegas.
Interesting. I wonder if they're building an ICE detention facility there?
No, this is all housing.
Oh, okay.
But they kind of got caught up in the deed, is what I say.
I see.
Home for veterans.
Interesting stuff. Jerry, thanks for the call. Yeah, thanks for the heads up on that. Appreciate it. 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just 1 minute. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have two openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his Attorney General, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon two openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out.
How many flags have to burn in the square? How many judges disappeared into air? How many lies dressed up as law and order before we admit we're standing at the border of something older than we want to believe? Something that takes more than it gives, never leaves. How many democracies must fall before we admit they want the same outcome for us all. Different accents, different flags they wave, same old hunger for a frightened, quiet grave. How many freedoms must we trade before we say their names out loud? How many democracies must fall before we admit it now?
Yep, Trump and Putin want the same thing. Welcome back. Jerome Powell is fighting back against Donald Trump's bullying efforts. This is tin pot dictator stuff. You know, we've seen this before in multiple third world countries, where the tin pot dictator gets charge and goes to the central bank and says lower interest rates to goose the economy. They do it, and they end up with, well, for example, in the case of Turkey, I believe it was 80% inflation for 1 year. And so Trump is unhappy that Jerome Powell has not lowered interest rates. Trump, of course, is driving the economy into the ground with his tariffs and his these massive cuts across government agencies, dialing back the investments that the Biden administration made with the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, all of this stuff, all of these efforts to make our economy work for average Americans are being undone by Trump and the Republicans and being replaced by tax cuts for billionaires and subsidies for the industries that the billionaires control. You know, whether it's crypto or whether it's AI or whether it's you know, social media, whatever it may be. So this is what Jerome Powell said now that Donald Trump has had his Justice Department, so-called, open a criminal investigation into the sitting chair of the Federal Reserve. He just called it right up. He said, this new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. Now, that's what Trump claims it's about. He said it's not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. These are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public rather than following the preferences of the president. He says this is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. Bingo. And the 2025 job numbers are in, and they're not just bad, they're calamitous. 2025 was the worst year, for job creation in a non-recession year since 2003, in the wake of the bursting of the dot-com bubble. The U.S. economy created on an average of just 49,000 jobs a month last year, but all of those jobs, all of them, those new jobs were driven by the fact that 10,000 people a day are aging into Social Security. In other words, the country is aging, and so the demands for health care are increasing. The care economy, healthcare and social assistance sectors, added 59,000 jobs a month all year in 2025. So that means that we have lost 129,000 jobs outside of the caring sector. Blue-collar jobs, gone. Small businesses, gone. White-collar jobs, gone. The only kind of jobs that are up right now are caring for old people, basically. According to the outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas, job cuts announced by U.S.-based employers surged 58% last year to 1.2 million, similar to what it was during the financial crisis, the Bush crash of 2008, surpassed only in history by the Trump COVID disaster year of 2020. Blue-collar employment down 100,000 jobs. Factories aren't coming back. They're still leaving. I mean, this is just, Donald Trump is destroying the economy. And I think he wants to blame it all on Jerome Powell. And, you know, people are saying this is an attempt to intimidate Jerome Powell into lowering interest rates. I think it's partly that. I think it's partly that he's setting Powell up to be the fall guy for what he did.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
What say you? I'll be right back with your calls. Stick around. book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. This is from the introduction, titled The Big Picture of Social Control versus Democracy. This book deals with two very large and often amorphous concepts, privacy and surveillance in the context of government and the marketplace. Both concepts have undergone changes over the millennia of recorded human history, and those changes have dramatically sped up and expanded over the past few centuries, starting with the widespread use of the printing press in the mid to the late 15th century, when books and newspapers began to proliferate across Europe, and in the rest of the civilized world by the end of the 17th century, civilized in quotes. The development of radio, television, and the internet in the 20th century heightened the need to define more clearly what both concepts meant and how they applied both to governments, the public sector, and to individual and corporate players, the private sector. The thought police and Big Brother are terms introduced into the popular lexicon by George Orwell in his novel 1984. Big Brother was the overweening, all-powerful government of Orwell's novel, and the thought police were those who managed to burrow so deeply into every citizen's behavior, speech, and even thoughts that they could control or punish behavior based on the slightest deviations from orthodoxy. Orwell was only slightly off the mark. Big Brother types of government and thought police types of social control are now widespread in the world and incompatible with democracy, as I'll show in more detail later in the book. Most concerning for Americans and citizens of other democratic nations, in quote, the mentality of both has heavily infiltrated both American government and corporate sectors, reaching so deeply into the day-to-day details of our lives that the techniques and technologies they use can and do not only control, but predict our behavior. The goals of those who violate privacy and use surveillance is almost always social control and behavior modification. Setting aside pure voyeurism, these are the areas where money is made, power is accumulated, and political or business goals are reached. And whether they are of government or of corporate Big Brother, the goals are largely the same and consistent with those just mentioned. Secrets are now for government and giant corporations to know and hold, but not for average people. And they're used by Big Brother to both acquire and hold power. J. Edgar Hoover had secrets to hide, for example, so he knew well their power. A gay man at the pinnacle of American power for most of his life, the FBI director knew that in many U.S. states, he and his lover, Clyde Tolson, could be prosecuted and sent to prison for their private, consensual behavior. Yet Hoover and Tolson lived together, and their relationship was an open secret among Washington's cognoscenti. I still remember a beautiful summer day in Ireland, Louise and I sitting in the living room of author Anthony Summers and his wife Robin, as they described to us the shocking details of Hoover's life and abuses of power they'd uncovered writing Official and Confidential, The Secret Life of J. Edgar Hoover. That books like Summers weren't published until after Hoover's death is a striking testimonial to the power of surveillance and the blackmail material it can produce to keep powerful people's secrets hidden even from the world's best investigative journalists. Every politician or reporter of any consequence knew that Hoover had a file on him. They were almost all men back then, and powerful men at that time were far more likely to harbor salacious secrets, ensuring Hoover an unbroken hold over the FBI from its founding in 1935 to his 1977 death. But Hoover didn't use his massive FBI surveillance powers just to cow politicians and reporters. He was also interested in advancing policies close to his heart. A dedicated white supremacist running an FBI where all meaningful power was held in white hands throughout his life, Hoover, or an underling at his behest, famously sent FBI surveillance tapes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. having an extramarital affair to the civil rights leader himself, implying that they'd next go to his wife and the public if he didn't commit suicide. Hoover also spent his entire career downplaying the role of Italian organized crime in the United States because, among other things, mafia godfather Santo Trafficante had the goods on his sexual orientation and regularly hosted him and Tolson for gambling junkets. When, in 1961, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy overruled Hoover and began prosecuting the mob, with the number of cases brought shooting up from dozens annually to over 700 a year in the early 1960s. The mafia backlash eventually destroyed the Kennedy dynasty. There's a more modern story of how surveillance and invasions of privacy have impacted American politics. The rise to the presidency of serial rapist, wannabe fascist, and crooked businessman Donald Trump. The biggest big brother of the corporate world, Facebook, had for years been compiling massive troves of personal data on Americans, even Americans without a Facebook account, as any page with a Facebook logo on it can send your browsing activity back to Facebook. And sometime in the mid-2010s, Cambridge Analytica hired a data scientist to put together an app that could suck down that data without Facebook's knowledge. Cambridge once bragged that they ended up with more than 4,000 data points on each of 230 million Americans. The book, The Hidden History of Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy, by Thom Hartmann. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Shadows fall across the ballot box. A voice declares the law's been lost. Paper torn from the people's hands. One man's will, a nation damned. This is the dictator's dream, to silence the crowd, erase what it means to choose our future, to speak out loud. They want control, but we won't bow.
Welcome back. There's a story over on Raw's Story right now about how some folks in Minneapolis, a guy was actually trying to get home and trying to drive into his neighborhood, and ICE thought that, and ICE was there, you know, going door to door or whatever they're doing. And they thought he was, the ICE guy thought that he was being followed by this guy who was just trying to get home. And so he comes back and confronts him, and the guy videos it. And the ICE guy says, you should have learned your lesson, or I thought you learned your lesson, you know, with the killing of Renee Good, that I can shoot you, I can kill you. And the guy just, you know, several times said, you know, just don't shoot me, just let me go home. I mean, this is just wild stuff. Just wild stuff. You can read it over at rawstory.com. Cece in Northbrook, Illinois. Hey, Cece, what's on your mind today?
Tom, it's ironic that you did your intro, which was perfect, by the way. You mentioned the children, and that's what I wanted to comment. I had 3 points. I wanted to talk about the children, and I also wanted to ask you about the word salad that I see the talking heads use, and the Democratic strategy on that. But I just feel so bad for the children, the trauma that they're experiencing, as you said, when we came up. Another thing I'm learning, Tom, I listened to your show, and I'm 60 years old. I'm just, as shameful as it is, I'm just realizing that people like you, and I was reading this book with Scott Galloway, I think his name is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called Notes on Being a Man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the way you guys came up. I'm like, you guys ate government cheese too. Mm-hmm. I mean, you came up about the same way as a poor black kid would. And I find that, I'm 60 years old, that's interesting to me. But, and I say that all to say that when we are children, things can happen that will traumatize us for the rest of our lives. And we can, like you said, that fork in the road. We can choose one way. We can go down that trauma where, you know, we can victimize others the way we were victimized, or we can take the other road and say, I'm going to overcome and contribute toward good. I'm not going to be damaged and carry that in life. So I say that to say we got to keep in mind the children, they're being, think about that 6-year-old. his mother dropped him off, and the next thing you know, somebody's telling him he won't see his mother again.
Right.
I mean, this is trauma in that child's life.
His life is shattered.
Who knows?
Yeah.
He might be the next person shooting somebody else's mother.
Yeah. God forbid,
or
yeah.
he might be the person like a Thom Hartmann. But, okay, Tom, but the next real quick point I wanted to ask you, this is a question to you, because I'm not understanding this. Why the talking heads on TV, they never use certain words, like they never use, well, never, some do, but they rarely use the word lie, or they rarely use the word treason. Right. Even that guy from, some guys I really admire, the one from, I think, I can't remember the talking heads. There's so many, but those two words, and I noticed that the Democratic Party, I feel optimistic, Tom. We're in this year. I'm very optimistic.
Oh, yeah. We're looking at probably a 30-seat gain in the House of Representatives and maybe taking back the Senate, too. This Mary Peralta, I think her name is, or something very much like that in Alaska, now becoming the Democratic candidate up there. We've got some good, strong candidates. I mean, there's only 2 states where there's still primaries going on that are of consequence, Texas and, and Maine, and frankly, I think good, strong Democratic candidates are going to come out of both. But the reason, CC, the reason why people in the media are reluctant to use either of those words, treason has a very specific meaning in law, giving aid and comfort to the enemy during time of war. And, it's very hard to prove, and it's kind of an inflammatory comment. And with lies, lie and liar are generally considered to be pejoratives. They're words that have a moral implication to them, in addition to a descriptive, thing. And so what they do is they go with the descriptors, untruth, falsehood, misleading. They use those kind of words which don't imply a moral judgment. They just, this is what it is. And, I get, why they're doing it. I mean, that's kind of classic, the journalism school 101, reporting and stuff like that. But I'm with you. I think, I'm not sure about using the word treason without a specific context, like saying, attacking Jerome Powell is arguably a form of treason against democracy. In other words, put it in a very specific little, package. But,
right.
But
I
use those words here a lot.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is, take a tactic from the Republican side.
Yeah.
Throw that word out there. Let them worry about it. Let them chase it. Then you move on to something else. That's what I'm saying. We're playing defense most of the time. We're being too scared. That's why Kamala, with black people, I'm going to be honest, with this black person, she's not very popular. Yeah. Because she's too careful. She's too, she doesn't want to mess up the status quo, say the wrong thing. And I think that's a mistake. Be like that mayor in Minneapolis. Throw it out there. That's your problem.
Yeah, get the F out of our city. Yeah, no, I'm with you. CC, I got to move along, but thank you. It was a great conversation, great points you made. Jessica in Phelan, California. Hey, Jessica, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I've got a question for you, but before I ask the question, I just want to thank your caller, Cece, and you for bringing up and talking about child neglect, abuse, and trauma, and what it can do to people. Yeah. I'm a pediatric speech language therapist, and I just find it ironic and really, really sad that a lot of the occupations that are focused on raising happy, healthy children and making them happy, healthy, productive citizens are just, derided and made fun of and called, quote unquote, women's work.
Poorly paid.
Work, valued.
And sometimes,
really
low standards for hiring. Yeah, I get it.
Exactly. But to my question, and again, thank you for taking my question. I want to talk about the billionaire Bill Ackman. Apparently, he has donated $10,000 to Renee Good's murderer. Wow. He is the owner and or director of Pershing Square Capital Management. It is an investment company that invests in companies, large, massive companies, such as Uber Tech, Hilton Worldwide, Amazon, Chipotle, and Alphabet, which is, I guess, Google. Mm-hmm. I know that as citizens, we can, divest from these particular companies stop buying from Chipotle, Amazon, etc. But more to the point, I had a question about stocks. How could individuals, this sounds terrible, excuse me, manipulate the stocks to where billionaires start to see like a drop and start to realize, you know what? When I have actions, my actions are going to have reactions from the public.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing that in a small way with Target right now, because Target about a year ago said, okay, we'll go along with the whole anti-DEI thing, and we're going to stop, trying to hire minorities, and we're going to stop, having female and minority-friendly policies. And and as a result, the black community has pretty much abandoned Target, and it's showing up in their annual, in their profits. It's hurting them. Yeah. In terms of investors, I mean, Bill Ackman buying stock in Chipotle doesn't make Chipotle bad. I think Chipotle is a fairly, from what I recall, a fairly well-managed company. It's got a good product. And I don't know how you can punish, I guess is what what you're suggesting, an investor. I mean, these guys are just they're worth billions and billions of dollars, and they're pretty much bulletproof. I don't mean that literally. I mean there's immune from public pressure, shall we say? And so. The best we can do, I suppose, is just let people know what they're up to, so their reputations don't remain intact. Just and in terms of driving down stock prices and things like that, I mean, pretty much the only way to do that is like what's going on with this consumer boycott of Target. Jessica, great questions. Thank you so much for the call, and it's great talking with you. Thank you. It's 44.5 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where despair is not an option. Get active. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Sue in Belmont, Michigan. Hey, Sue. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
This whole ICE thing really concerns me, especially since the killing of Renee Good. Mm-hmm. And as you remember, the mayor said, get the whatever out of here. So I'm thinking maybe a result of that is now they're moving over to St. Paul. And they're going door to door. And I'm wondering what the St. Paul mayor is going to say. Mm. Now, what hits me at the heart is my daughter and her husband live in West St. Paul. Mm. And I said, you need to talk to the mayor to see what the protocols are to, say if I should decide to come to their house.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I don't know if it would help any, but the Fourth Amendment, putting that in their window so ICE can see that, but they may not pay attention to that because and I'm just kind of wondering if maybe this could be a call to all mayors to take some kind of protocol should ICE move into their city. I'm just...
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know what the protocol is right now for St. Paul, but my daughter and her husband, they live in West St. Paul, which is a different county.
Right.
But
I don't know the answer to those questions, Sue, but I do agree with you. The Fourth Amendment says the right of all persons in the United States to be free, free and safe in their persons, possessions, papers, and effects, or something like that, shall not be violated, except by a judicial order that's issued as a result of eyewitness testimony or serious evidence. I'm wildly paraphrasing here. I don't have the Fourth Amendment memorized, but it's close to that.
Could the mayors take that to heart when they do a protocol for their cities should ICE show up there?
You would think, but I mean, the federal government wields considerable power, particularly the power to fund or withhold funding, and so I don't know what kind of blowback has happened to Jacob Frey yet. Or Frey, excuse me. The guy who is the mayor of Minneapolis, when he said, "Get the F out of my city," and that this is just BS, that Nicole Good was a terrorist. But I guarantee you there will be punishment, and Nome ramping up the number of people there. I mean, we're just looking at this is just pure raw fascism. This is a generic fascism, and intimidating the citizens.
People need to know their rights. They need to know their constitutional rights.
I
so
agree.
maybe this, if anything, can be a call out to everybody to know their rights.
Yeah.
And the Fourth Amendment, for sure. There are probably some other ones, but that one stands out during this issue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I wonder if ICE coming into these communities could be construed as a violation of the Third Amendment. I don't think that one's ever been adjudicated in the history of the country. That you can't quarter troops in cities. Sue, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Sadly, your question raises more questions than it does answers. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Mike in Gainesville, Virginia. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hey, Tom. After this weekend's talk shows, I'm more convinced than ever it was not a rogue officer. It was not a small conspiracy. This was to implement a new national policy through example.
I agree. And this is the 9th time ISIS shot into a car, and the 2nd time they've killed somebody doing it.
Yeah, but this time they killed a U.S. citizen. So basically, their view is that you basically, if you follow or block an ICE vehicle, you are subject to violent arrest, or if you try to flee, you will be executed.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is, because they totally defended this guy, and he's a hero among all the officers. Yes, he gave us the power to, commit murder. Mm-hmm. And they're basically going to back up this.
Yeah, this is this ICE agent, yesterday afternoon in Minneapolis, coming up to a guy who was just trying to get to his house, saying, "Didn't you learn the lesson from the shooting of Renee Good? I can kill you. Do what I say."
Well, yeah. Well, I hope that guy recorded that. That ICE agent.
I believe he did. I'd have to go back to the story on Raw's story. If he did, I didn't see a clip of it.
That should be played everywhere. But I've been trying to get, my congressman and everybody to try to have at least legislation that says if you take a shot at a car from the side, you cannot use self-defense as your,
Okay, here's what happened. This is a video that's posted to Reddit. And this is from WGTC. And, sir, this is a warning. Stop effing following us. You are impeding operations. This is the United States government. The driver says, I live over here. I'm trying to get to my house. The officer yells, this is your warning. The resident replies, I serve the Lord. I go to church. I will arrest you. Don't make a bad decision, says another agent. Now, the driver again says, I serve the Lord, not a draft-dodging coward. And then he says, he adds, let these people go to church. Let these people serve the Lord and worship. And the cop, the ICE guy says, you're not going to like the outcome of this, sir. I guarantee that. Did you not learn from what just happened when Renee Good was killed? Learn what, the driver said. I serve the Lord, not a draft-dodging coward. I can't believe you'd take orders from a draft dodger. And the officer says, make America safe again, brother. And I mean, that's the whole interaction.
Yeah, but it's basically ridiculous. I mean, but the Democrats have to do something. They have to force the Republicans to take votes on these things.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, they have to force Noam. Say, is this your policy now? Because the ICE officer basically placed himself in danger so he could commit an execution.
Yeah, no, and this is the other thing is that there's these incidents all over the country of ICE guys walking in front of cars, apparently so that they'll have a legal justification to shoot the driver by saying, oh, he tried to weaponize his car. Mike, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Spot on. Randall in Syracuse, New York. Hey, Randall, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Fine.
Listen, it's my impression that Donald Trump, his administration, they seem to use the tactic of going after finances, money. That's what they're all about, is money. I know they're into power, but money seems to be one of the big keys here. And you'll have a better idea of it. I can imagine how bad it might get, but it seems to me that maybe the solution to get everyone's attention in Congress and in the White House might be to attack the economy ourselves. Now, I'm not talking just boycotts of Target. What happens to the bank and what happens to Wall Street if millions of dollars that are invested and deposited in these places are removed? If you take away some of their ability to play Monopoly, could we not get their attention?
Yeah, in theory. I mean, the problem that the United States has, unique among all the other Western democracies, and this is the consequence of 44 years of Reaganism, we used to have a third of the population being members of unions, and unions would call boycotts. I mean, Cesar Chavez with the Farm Workers Union famously called the Great Boycott back in the day. And in Europe, most of your European countries have unionization rates between 70 and 90%. And so, you know, when France gets shut down, it's because the unions call for France to get shut down. When England gets shut down, I mean, you know, Maggie Thatcher, the first big challenge was the coal miners' union, and she broke that union's back, and that led, you know, Reagan to break the back of Patco. So because we no longer have a strong union movement with a large, you know, with a majority of Americans, or even a significant minority, you know, a third of Americans being members of unions, we don't really have an organizing system. Indivisible has sort of stepped into that space, you know, along with some of the other groups, you know, Common Cause and some of these others and Move to Amend, et cetera, that kind of collaborate with them, with Indivisible, to organize things like the No Kings protests or the ICE Out protests from last weekend. And by the way, Louise and I went to the one in Vancouver. It was a hoot. But you know, they're tiny compared to a union that has 70% of the workforce, you know. So that's the problem. Organizing a boycott in the United States, and I'm sure that this is one of the reasons why Reagan and the Republicans set out to destroy the unions, in addition to just, you know, increasing profitability for their billionaire buddies, you know, is it makes it a lot harder for any kind of organized action against anybody. Randall, thanks for the call. Great point.
We need to use social media to organize in the same manner that Trump and his cronies do, would be my view on that.
Yeah, well, start. You know, do it by all means. Randall, thanks for the call. We'll be back on the other side of the break with Christopher Armitage. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Today is the Seven Mountains Mandate by Matthew Bodie, exposing the dangerous plan to Christianize America and destroy democracy. We'll start with the introduction, the story of the mountains. The plan to Christianize America began 50 years ago with a vision from God, or so the legend goes. Bill Bright, the founder of a college campus evangelism organization, had just landed in Colorado in August of 1975 to participate in an event in Boulder. But something planted deep in his spirit had made Bright desperate to talk to Lauren Cunningham, a founder of another youth-oriented evangelism organization who was on vacation in Colorado. The vision from God that Bright had brought for Cunningham was a typed list of 7 influential areas of culture. If Christians could win these 7 areas for Christ, Bright said, the nation could be set right and return to its biblical origins. It would take a massive spiritual war, but ending the demonic control of these areas would have immense impact for the kingdom of God. The vision from God that Bright had brought for the Constitution, the problem was that God had placed Cunningham on a mountaintop near Durango on the other side of the state with no way to communicate. The man who had picked up Bright at the airport said he could get the two together. Someone got through to a ranger station in Durango, and then from there, someone on horseback found Cunningham's remote location. That man took Cunningham to a borrowed plane, which flew Cunningham to meet the man who had the urgent message from God. What Bright didn't know was that God had given Cunningham the same list, though his was sketched out on a legal pad. The two friends presented their lists to each other simultaneously. Cunningham later wrote, "Amazing coincidences like this happen all the time when Christians listen to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit." Over the years, the story of that 1975 meeting has been told many ways, accepted not merely as gospel, but a divine endorsement of the list that Bright and Cunningham created. Whatever the truth of the meeting, the list has become powerful spiritual lore passed down from one generation to another in the movement born from it. That movement is intent on destroying democracy by taking dominion in these 7 institutions: education, family, religion, government, business, media, and entertainment. Over the decades, many have made their mark on the list by envisioning different labels for it. While Bright and Cunningham spoke of areas of influence, others have called them gates, pillars, channels, and most commonly among the movement's supporters today, mountains. The preferred metaphor evolved over time, but the purpose of the list has remained the same: bring the kingdom of God to America by conquering each of these cultural domains. The story of the 7 Mountains movement told in this book is the story of those who inspired and shaped that 1975 list. It's also about how the list has come to dominate American political life in the 21st century without most Americans even having heard about it. This insidious victory is the work of a new generation of believers who have pushed it with more and more aggression, pushing us closer and closer to violence, threatening our society through their claim to divine urgency. In short, this is the story of how the list became a mandate. The spiritual energy behind this mandate pushed the list into the White House with the 2016 election of Donald Trump. From there, the movement exploded beyond the fringes of charismatic evangelicalism into larger institutions, influencers, and financial backers. To the handful of experts who have followed the movement for years, it was no surprise its supporters turned violent when the 2020 election didn't go the way they wanted, the way they say God wanted. This is where the movement has been headed. Yet even more frightening, since the 2021 insurrection at the Capitol, more Americans seemingly want what the Seven Mountains movement wants also. A June 2023 survey of 2,000 Americans estimated about 30% are open to the ideas associated with the Seven Mountains movement, such as things like the U.S. culture is fundamentally Christian, and Christian values should be solely and explicitly endorsed by the government. Another 2023 survey found a similar percentage of Americans either adhering to or sympathetic to these ideals. A second Trump administration only reinforces that. Of course, many of the Americans in those polls are the demographic most supportive of the mandate, the evangelicals. A 2024 survey showed that strong majorities of evangelicals agree broadly with the goals of the Seven Mountain movement. About 55% of evangelicals specifically agreed that, quote, God wants Christians to stand atop the seven mountains of society, end quote. The survey also showed that the percentage of Christian Americans who believe in the mandate increased from just under 30% to over 41% in just 1 year. The surveyors note that, quote, what not long ago seemed to be a marginal set of beliefs has become a dominant religious framework among American Christians, end quote. The Seven Mountains movement has been adopted across the religious right, even by leaders who may not share its theology, because their followers are being motivated by the mandate. For example, the 2022 National Day of Prayer Guide from the Southern Baptist Convention asks its congregants to pray for the seven centers of influence. Beyond religion, the Seven Mountains movement has become so accepted in American society that it has supporters from all levels of government. The book, The Seven Mountains Mandate, Exposing the Dangerous Plan to Christianize America and Destroy Democracy, by Matthew Bodie.
We say fight back!
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is Christopher Armitage. He's a journalist, criminal justice researcher, former law enforcement officer, veteran, and author. He's got a great newsletter, The Existentialist Republic. It's at cmarmitage.substack.com, and it's free. I strongly suggest that you sign up and read his newsletter. It's one of the better ones out there. Christopher Armitage, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom. I'm honored to be here.
I understand you are in Minneapolis right now.
I am.
So I wanted to talk to you about your piece a couple days ago, how extrajudicial killing became legal. But just to start out, the piece that you published this morning in your newsletter was really pretty remarkable about an encounter you had with ICE. Tell us about it.
So I've been in Minneapolis for about 72 hours, and days 1 and 2 involved local activists taking me out. I had just put a call out through my newsletter asking for folks out here. This activist, it's very interesting. She's in the same demographic as Renee Good, who was murdered. And so they're about the same age, parents, and now she's getting involved and trying to help people who are in need locally. And so she was taking me around, and some of the things we did where we went outside the Whipple building where ICE is doing a lot of work. And we went to a march where a bunch of Native Americans were leading the way, and folks in different communities of color were really taking the lead, which was awesome. And you couldn't even park within a mile of the half mile to a mile of the place because there were so many people there. And then the work that we were doing yesterday involved there's about 13,000 trained legal observers in Minneapolis and in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And so we went out in the community and we would get calls from people saying, hey, ICE is here, they're harassing people. We got a call to go to an apartment complex in a lower income area where they had just been kicking in doors and going door to door, getting a hold of people. Whoa. We got a call to go to
How
a
is
school.
that, Chris, you're former law enforcement. How is that not a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
Well, it depends on who's interpreting what the amendments are. And that's really such an important part of this. You can ask folks, like I'm here with my older brother, Bashir, and he was an activist, especially during the early days of Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's not white. And his interactions with law enforcement his whole life have involved them, the difference between what your rights are, because he's always known his rights, he's very sharp, and what happens on the ground and what's actually going to result in a consequence for those officers. Those are two very, very different things. And what we're seeing now is this like intense outcropping from how we let law enforcement and our constitutional rights erode so far that they are washed to the sea. Yeah. And that document doesn't have any teeth anymore.
Yeah. One of the things that you note in your piece, how extrajudicial killings became legal, you write, here are three clear demands. One, agents identify or face arrest. Badge number, name, agency. Refusal means you have no authority. Prosecute accordingly. Two, states prosecute federal agents with committing crimes. When the feds intervene, keep prosecuting, stopping his acquiescence, continuing his justice. And three, prosecute Jonathan Ross for the murder of Renee Nicole Good. I understand that you reached out to the Attorney General's office there in Minneapolis, Keith Ellison. Did you hear back about why are they not forcing an investigation or prosecution of this ICE officer who shot this woman in the face 3 times?
Well, I want to start by giving credit because it's really easy to criticize and say, we want. And so they have opened up a tip line for people to send the evidence, and they say that they're investigating. Now, there's an element to this, though, where we need documentation, but we need more urgently is intervention. Mm-hmm. When people are being actively harmed and the officers are not supposed to be going into hospitals. Well, we were getting phone calls and responding because people, this is all one day of working and, following these people who every single day what they're doing is they get these calls from people who are terrified and so they're not supposed to go into hospitals. Well, they were all circling outside of a hospital and trying to find ways to get inside of the hospital. And there were children inside of that hospital who were being protected.
Wow. Here in Portland, we just got a thing from our mayor saying that ICE is pretending to be power people working for the power company, the electric company, and banging on doors or actually I think it was the gas company. They're Northwest Natural, claiming that they're with the gas company, and we need to get into your house and look for leaks. And what they're really looking for is people with brown skin, the so-called Kavanaugh stops.
Yeah, well, and they're getting they're following people, brown people getting pulled over and harassed, and then even activists and people who are just legal observers using their constitutional rights, and they'll follow them and stalk them and then drive them. They've driven them off the road. That was just yesterday. These are all things I heard in one day. And then it came to a head in an incident where we got a call that ICE agents, totally in plain clothes, faces covered, were inside of a gym. And so we went there. And it's mostly a group of soccer moms that I was with who are some of the bravest, strongest activists, it is so different. I was a law enforcement officer, and I'm telling you, it is so different to be on the other side of an unhinged person who has a badge and a gun, and they're the one who's unhinged. And so that is a very different thing when you have the authority. Yeah. And so we responded to that. These officers came out. I was recording on my phone. An officer said, "Oh, you think you're slick, huh?" And it pretty quickly escalated. And there's video on the Existentialist Republic YouTube page, but I said, "I just don't want to get shot." And that officer charged at me. He had it one hand, another one came out. They both had their hands on their guns. This officer had a baton out, and he said, "Is that a threat?" And I said, it's not a threat. Is it a threat for me to say that I don't want to be shot? Do you have a problem with the First Amendment? He said, do you want to get arrested? Do you want to get arrested? And he's moving towards me aggressively and saying all these things. And it is I got out of the situation. I put my hands up in the air and I shut my mouth because I would have been beaten or who knows what, because I fully believe that we're not going to get justice from the federal government. And that article that you were mentioning about how extrajudicial killings have become legal, well, that gets back to what is allowed and what is legal. Mm-hmm. And what matters is what is allowed, what is tolerated.
Right, right. And that's what's going on. And that was, in my opinion, the performance this weekend, this disgusting performance of Kristi Noem and others going on the Sunday talk shows and justifying the murder of Renee Good, calling her a domestic terrorist and lying about what we could all see with our eyes, is nothing more than this administration telling the tens of thousands of ICE officers that they have now, or the thousands, I don't know how many they have total yet, but they've got a larger budget than the FBI, telling these ICE officers the restraints are gone. You guys can do whatever the hell you want. You can shoot somebody in the face as they're driving away after they said, I'm not mad at you. You can shoot them in the face and call them an effing bitch, and we will back you up. We will back you up on national television. We will do it right in front of God and the whole world.
Yeah, and it's absolutely brutal, and that's just in the day of the protest. The march was totally peaceful and fine, but that's, I also think part of that is just because the marches are important for gathering people, motivating them, engaging with them, but that's why we weren't facing any issues. Is it was a very permitted, orderly, allowed affair.
Right.
But these agents are out here. I'm a constitutionalist. I want people, whether they're left or center or just anyone who isn't fascist, that as much as I would love more constitutional amendments, gosh, if we just had governors and state representatives and state attorneys generals out here defending the U.S. Constitution, because that is a higher authority than a corrupted federal government, a captured federal government that's run by what's essentially a transnational criminal organization disguised as a political party called the GOP.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. The newsletter is The Existentialist Republic. The author is Christopher Armitage, a journalist, criminal justice researcher, former law enforcement officer, veteran. The website is cmarmitage.substack.com. I have that right, Chris?
Yes, and also people can go to the existentialistrepublic.com and they can purchase. We have a bunch of products like my Intro to Self-Secession booklet, which is about states taking control of their rights to fight fascism.
Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Tom.
And welcome back. Brian in Eugene, Oregon. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My concern is I'm kind of changing it into, I want to talk about Citizens United. Mm-hmm. And I think we see where it has raised corporations. But I think what we're missing is, at the same time, what they've done is they've degraded the human person to at least a second-class consideration. I think that we all need to realize that we are now the other. You and I, as we walk with blood coming through our veins and moving forward in our lives, are that. And my extended concern, I guess healthcare would be one of the greatest examples of this, but my extended concern is when this obsessive, just crazy belief is embedded in the foundations of the development of AI programs. I think that it would be kicking down the last hurdles in those developments and creating a scenario by which our greatest fears would be played out, which is, we know what those are when we think of AI, what we really, what those fears are, what we are concerned about, And so I think that we need to think that over, where we all stand now in this decision. And, you know, when it was first implemented back in the day in 2010, I was just waiting for the Democrats to come up with something in a way of a response. And I would have inundated the biggest religious strongholds of the nation with billboards and advertisements saying, "Move over, Lord God. There's a new creator in town." You know what I'm saying? We never go to the root of these things. And I also believe that if we can ever get a chance to speak of minimum wage again, we should consider Citizens United as the
Well,
new
this is what
parameter.
Elizabeth Warren was talking about last night. She gave this speech about the future of the Democratic Party. And basically what she was saying is the Democratic Party needs to go back to its populist roots. It needs to go back to FDR and LBJ. She didn't use that kind of language. I'm extrapolating, but that was the essence of it, and that we need to be economic populists first and foremost, with a strong embrace of the concepts of liberty and freedom that are expressed in the Bill of Rights, you know, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, and the Constitution itself, for that matter. And that this is a winning message for Democrats this fall, and Democrats need to embrace it. And I think it's been a winning message since, I mean, this has been Bernie's message for, 20 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, Bernie started coming on this program 23 years ago, every single Friday for 11 years.
That's how I learned who he was, by listening to your program.
That's true of a lot of people. We gave him a national platform, and it became a big deal.
And he's always been on the right path.
Yeah, he has. He's been solid, and so has Elizabeth Warren. I would love to see her run for president. I realize she's pushing 70, but there are some really good progressive, really good people within the Democratic Party right now. I'm really encouraged and very hopeful. So we'll see where it goes. Brian, excellent points all. Thank you very much for the call. It's in just a couple seconds. It'll be 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. You know, we've all gotten so used to living in a country where people are trying to crowdfund, like, cancer research for children. St. Jude's is a wonderful charity, but we're the only developed country in the world that needs, where you have to go to people and beg for money in order to treat children with cancer. Or Shriners, I mean, another great charity, but shouldn't we all be funding children who are born with birth defects and problems like that? We're probably the only country in the world where you can sell your life insurance policy because Social Security doesn't cover your retirement. I mean, it's probably not happening anywhere else in the world. Or reverse mortgage your home because you can't afford it. I mean, this is crazy that we are living in a country where No Kid Hungry, a charity. You can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed I wrote about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled America's Sickest Reality Show, Crowdfunding Cancer Care While Billionaires Hoard Billions. Check it out.
Yeah. Another year turns over. Same hands on the wheel.
Gold buys the laws in the dead of night. Boots hit the ground to keep order right. Oboes hum with a holy sound, telling you heaven's on the other side of down. They shake hands behind closed doors, call it freedom, both the floors. The Trump cartel tightens its grip through wealth, force, and faith. They rule it. They wave the flag, quote God and guns, and send the bill to everyone.
22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So this weekend, groups including Indivisible, 50-51, the Disappeared in America campaign, Voto Latino, and the American Civil Liberties Union. 67,000 people RSVP'd to attend over 1,000 protests, and millions showed up. So, you know, step by step, we're getting there. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, the sheriff, Rochelle Bilal, had a few words for ICE. Here is the sheriff of Philadelphia.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made-up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Kraftner, who said he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of.
There you go. None of that here. We are not going to put up with it. That's the sheriff of Philadelphia. I mean, this is pretty amazing. This is pretty amazing. We're starting to see actual pushback. Now, is he going to take her on? I don't know. We'll see. Meanwhile, more proof that Trump doesn't know what he was doing. In his meeting with all the oil executives on Friday, you'll recall Trump, the whole point of this was, you know, the American oil companies left Venezuela. Will you guys go back in? And so he asks the CEO of Halliburton, you know, why did you guys leave Venezuela? And in the most delicate way possible, Surfer Ed writes over on Democratic Underground, the CEO explained that the company had to leave because of Trump's sanctions against Venezuela in 2020. Yeah, it was Trump, 2019 and 2020. Here's the article from Reuters. This is from 2019. Oil field services provider Halliburton Company has eliminated all staff positions in Venezuela as a result of U.S. sanctions limiting its operations in that crisis-stricken OPEC nation. These are sanctions put into place by Donald Trump. They go on to note, this is again Reuters, the United States in 2019 sanctioned state oil company Petróleos de Venezuela as part of the push to oust President Nicolas Maduro. We have zero headcount in Venezuela, the spokeswoman said. This is from Halliburton. So here you've got, you know, Halliburton saying, yes, Mr. President, we left because you forced us out. Do we want to go back now? I don't think so. The ExxonMobil guy, the CEO of ExxonMobil, was like, well, I don't know. It's kind of uninvestable. It's like, you know, the dynamic in Venezuela does not cause our company to want to put billions of dollars into that company. It's too unstable. I mean, right now, you've got vigilante squads going around on behalf of the government and on behalf of this so-called left-wing government. I would say it's a right-wing government because they're ruling by terror, which is what right-wing governments do. But, you know, going around on motorcycles, stopping people with automatic weapons, stopping people and demanding to see their phones, to see if they have texted or used social media to in any way criticize the current regime. I mean, I'm guessing Donald Trump is just fine with this. It's the kind of thing he'd like to do to you and me, right? So what say you? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Up next on the other side of the break, Dave in Auburn, California. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Vince Houghton's Nuking the Moon and Other Intelligence Schemes and Military Plots Left on the Drawing Board. This is Chapter 7, Operation Northwoods. On April 17, 1961, more than 1,400 Cuban exiles forming the Brigada de Asalto 2506 landed on the beaches of Cuba at Playa Girón in the Bahia de Cojinos, the Bay of Pigs. Their mission was to overthrow the regime of Fidel Castro, Cuba's increasingly communist leader, who had himself overthrown the regime of American ally Batista just 2 years before. A communist leader just 90 miles from Key West was a rather painful thorn in the side of the newly inaugurated President John F. Kennedy, and his ouster was considered a high national security priority, as it had been for Kennedy's predecessor, Dwight Eisenhower. The invasion was backed by the U.S. government and the CIA. We can argue why the Bay of Pigs invasion failed until we're blue in the face, and many people still do. For many in the Cuban exile community, the mission failed because JFK refused to give American naval and air support, elements called in for the original plan developed by the Eisenhower administration. Maybe this is true. The problem here is that we begin to descend into the realm of the counterfactuals, the if-onlys and what-ifs, things that we are doing our damnedest to avoid. Look, I've met a lot of the Cubans who took part in that invasion, many of whom are permanently settled in or around Miami, my hometown. They are impressive men, and I wouldn't put anything past them. If they say they could have kicked out Castro with U.S. naval and air support, who am I to argue? But I still will, because things are much more complicated from an intelligence perspective. Despite the lack of air and naval support, and despite the intensity and desire of the Cuban exile forces, it would have been immeasurably difficult to overcome one of the most problematic aspects of the entire invasion. Castro not only knew they were coming, he knew when and where they were coming. A combination of piss-poor information security, or in today's parlance, InfoSec, with the ability of Cuban intelligence to infiltrate the Miami exile community meant that the secret mission to free Cuba of Castro was anything but secret. It's not like this was a huge surprise for the CIA or the U.S. military. The Cuban intelligence service was very good, and some in the exile community had loose lips. In this environment, it was nearly impossible to conduct effective counterintelligence and keep the invasion secret. Most telling of all, the Soviets had literally broadcast their knowledge of the mission 4 days before it happened. On April 13th, Radio Moscow released an English-language newscast in which they predicted an invasion of Cuba by CIA-trained exiles within the week. It seems they were trying to warn us against carrying out the invasion, a type of deterrence through propaganda. Hey, we know you're coming, so perhaps now is not a good time for your secret operation. Clearly, that didn't work. The blowback from the failed mission was significant on multiple levels. More than 100 members of the 2506 Brigade were killed in combat, along with 4 American volunteer pilots from the Alabama Air National Guard, who were contracted by the CIA. Hundreds more in Cuba would be executed in the days and weeks following the invasion, as Castro eliminated anyone suspected of abetting the exiles. More than 1,200 of the brigade would be captured by the Cuban government, and some of those members were subsequently executed. The Kennedy administration was embarrassed by the failed mission. The U.S. government looked inept and failing to maintain order even in its own backyard. In the zero-sum game of the Cold War, where victory for one of the superpowers was defeat for the other, this was a huge win for the Soviets. Not to mention that the invasion pushed Castro even more firmly into the Soviet sphere of influence. And as far as the strength of the regime was concerned, the Bay of Pigs invasion did the exact opposite of what was intended. It made Castro's regime more powerful than ever before. The operation was a great political victory for the Cubans at home and abroad. Castro was a hero in the eyes of his people for defeating the Yankee invasion and was able to consolidate his power. The fiasco also elevated the Cuban government to a newfound global status, transforming communist Cuba from an aggrieved little country to an equal in the eyes of the world. In fact, Argentinian physician turned Cuban revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara actually thanked the United States for the failed invasion. The CIA bore the brunt of the blame for the failed mission. President Kennedy fired CIA Director Allen Dulles, along with Deputy Director Charles Cabell and Deputy Director for Plans Richard M. Bissell, the 3 men who made up the core of the agency's leadership, particularly in the realm of covert action. Kennedy also removed, at least temporarily, major paramilitary operations from the purview of the CIA. For more than a decade, CIA had been the agency with primary responsibility for paramilitary covert operations, but now it was benched. Into the void leapt the U.S. military. In June 1961, about 2 months after the Bay of Pigs, President Kennedy approved National Security Action Memoranda 55, 56, and 57, which codified the shift in paramilitary responsibility from the CIA to the Pentagon. Nothing else really changed. The U.S. government was still looking for ways to oust Castro from power, just through a different government agency. By autumn, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, Brigadier General Edward Lansdale, a legendary intelligence officer, or infamous, or both, depending on your perspective, was asked to brainstorm ideas to get rid of Fidel. He didn't disappoint. In February 1962, Lansdale provided a document titled Possible Actions to Provoke, Harass, or Disrupt Cuba. Some of the actions are pretty good, some are quite silly, and some are downright abhorrent. The book is Nuking the Moon by Vince Houghton.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. I remember my dad's Republican Party, the Republican Party of Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower, who ran on advocacy for democracy around the world, for a clean environment, for honest wages, for unions, for building infrastructure, for government balanced spending, for peace in the world. This is from his 1956 campaign.
Eisenhower knows how to deal with the Russians. He has met Europe's leaders, has got them working with us. Elect the #1 man for the #1 job of our time. November 4th, vote for peace. Vote for Eisenhower. A paid bill.
Right. Vote for peace. That was it. And now the Republicans are the party of, you know, military boondoggles and corruption and hate and anti-union and everything, the opposite of everything Eisenhower stood for. Will the Republican Party survive this? What are they going to come back as? There's a whole op-ed about this titled Goodbye Liz Cheney over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
The feed refreshes. The light flickers. A quiet click, and truth dissolves. Scrolling rivers of illusion, truth and lies in tight collusion. Every heartbeat's just a metric now, while the code decides who we allow. It learns our fear, it feeds our doubt. It keeps us in and locks us out. Is the algorithm humanity's greatest threat? The code forgets what humans don't forget. It don't feel guilt.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So there's a fundraising site for Jonathan Ross, the ICE officer who shot Nicole Good in the face. It's titled Stand With Our Brave ICE Hero. Describes Good as a, quote, radical leftist agitator guilty of, quote, blatant acts of domestic terrorism. And then it goes on to say, and this is astonishing, it goes on to say, quote, but this didn't happen in a vacuum. It is the direct result of anti-American traitors like Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who is Jewish, fanning the flames of resistance. This campaign has raised over $170,000 for Ross, along with a GoFundMe campaign that's raised over $400,000. This guy's going to be rich when he's done with this. But why are they pointing out that the mayor of Minneapolis is Jewish? I mean, it kind of tells you everything about these kind of people. They're anti-Semitic, they're racists, they're fascists. So what's on your mind? Dave in Auburn, California. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Yeah, I want to suggest that the people that are looking at this investigation by the FBI go right directly to a civil lawsuit for a wrongful death lawsuit, and skip all this federal investigation or all investigations. Just go to the civil court and let the jurors look at this video and come up with their own conclusion.
You cannot sue a federal officer without the permission of the federal government.
Well, you got to sue somebody for a wrongful death suit.
I agree you should be able to, but I'm pretty sure you can't. You can sue state officers that way, and you can sue local officers that way, but there's a whole bunch of provisions that prevent federal officers from being sued that way, except under extraordinary circumstances. This may qualify, but I don't think so. Dave, I'm with you. I agree with your perspective. I just don't think it's going to happen. Thank you for the call. Pearson in Lamarck, Texas. Hey, Pearson, what's up?
Well, another theoretical good Monday afternoon to you. But there's nothing theoretical about your bumper music. It is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
You guys do a great job.
Thank you. Louise does a great job with that.
And I want to thank you for an earlier conversation you had over an hour ago with a caller named Susan. I believe you have inspired me to, later on this evening, look up on Google the mayor of Minneapolis' phone number so I can leave a friendly message, voice message of support, and find out if he's running for office soon and make a contribution to him in that way, in addition to a contribution I plan to make to Inequality Media, in addition to Free Speech TV on your behalf.
Thank you.
So that's what I plan to do to feel a little bit better, besides having a chocolate-filled croissant tonight with some coffee.
I get it.
So the reason I called is I want to remind you of something that I know you already know, but you overlooked it. And that's what you alluded to earlier in your conversation about the oligarchy, how nowadays they're not standing down, whereas during FDR's time they did. Mm-hmm. Well, let's remind the audience that they were planning to kidnap and or kill Franklin Delano Roosevelt if it wasn't for a Republican general, I believe, Army general?
Yep, Smedley Butler. He was a Marine general. And he blew the whistle on this plot that Rene DuPont and his brother and several other industrialists had put together to use this veterans organization that had 500,000 members, a right-wing veterans organization, to march on the White House and physically seize Franklin Roosevelt and either kill or kidnap him and replace our government with a German-friendly, neo-fascist, business-friendly government. Yeah, it was in 1933.
That's right. So the takeaway from all this, from our conversation here and now, is that we have to let our fellow time travelers across America understand that this fight is always there. Always there. Mm-hmm. And to let their kids know when they become parents, hey, democracy is something you have to fight for every day, because the oligarchs, they multiply just like we do.
Yeah, and they've got a lot more resources, but they don't. What was the old Jim Morrison line? Yeah. They've got the guns, but they've got the. We've got the numbers, but they've got the guns, or words to that effect. But you get the point.
And they're fundraising for an officer who's not really an officer. He's a Klansman, basically. That's what he is.
Oh, I know. The Klan wore hoods for the exact same reason ICE wears hoods, so that they would not be held accountable for the violence that they're inflicting on Americans. You're absolutely right.
That's right.
Pearson, thank you.
Before I hang up, I got an idea I want to pass by you.
Yeah.
What do you think of the idea? What do you think of the idea of, let's say, when Officer what's his face was leaving the vehicle where he killed that woman, and he was heading back to his vehicle, and he motioned to the people ahead, call 911. What do you think the impact would have been on him had there been left-wing activists showing up suddenly with motion pictures of young kids crying at their mother's coffin? In other words, the same way that right-wingers have done outside of women's health care clinics.
Yeah, I get it. I don't think it would have mattered to him, Pearson. I think that anybody who would behave the way he did is clearly a psychopath. This guy is a killer. He's a stone-cold killer. He did it. He did it with glee. He called her an effing bitch after he shot her and knew and had to have known that he had killed her. He watched himself shoot her in the face 3 times. I mean, he's not going to be moved by pictures of children. Come on, it's this guy's a killer. So Pearson,
finally, to take away.
Yeah, it's a good idea, Pearson, but I got to move along. Thank you, Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Hey, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she was asked specifically this weekend about the use of force against Rene Good, and she responded that if you look at the definition of terrorism, Rene Good was domestic terrorism. Rene Good was involved, was acting, she was being a domestic terrorist.
To the best of my knowledge, there is no definition of domestic terrorism. There's no law against it.
Well, I just Googled it just to make sure because this Trump regime is changing things rather quickly, Tom. Yeah. No, last time we had a serious conversation about it as a nation was after January 6th. There is, under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, there is a definition of domestic terrorism.
Oh, there is.
You cannot charge anyone. Yeah, but you cannot charge anyone. It's used to enhance other charges. Okay. And
but it can't be a primary charge.
You're right. We've gone from no primary charge to apparently it's okay to do summary executions. Right. And the reason why I bring this up is because Mike Waltz at the United Nations specifically said that the Maduro regime was guilty of extrajudicial killings. And also President Trump himself just recently said the regime in Iran rules out of fear of and threat of violence.
Just a little bit ago in Minneapolis, this was posted over on X, the video of this. I saw the link to it over on democraticunderground.com. ICE busted into somebody's house, literally kicked in the door. It was a black family. And you can hear the woman saying, where's your warrant? You know, I don't have to open the door. You guys have not presented us with a warrant. ICE did not have a warrant, but they kicked in the door. And then when she demanded to see a warrant, they tased her. They hit her with a taser in her own house. This is not America, Dave. This is how they do it in Russia. This is how they did it in Nazi Germany. This is not America.
No, and they stacked on the front door. This is how we did it in Iraq. Okay, it wasn't a court. It's a cordon. And they just kicked the door. They kicked the door in. Yeah. Also, Tom, hey, just my suggestion: when left-wing and right-wing international governments, I wouldn't wade into that if I was you. Because
okay,
you know what I'm saying? It's
I got it.
Violence against the citizenry.
I got it. Yeah, Dave, thanks for the call. Anyway, we'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Right back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for we, the people of the United States of America. And welcome back. Axel in Los Angeles. Hey, Axel, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for taking my call. So I'm calling from Los Angeles, and I just would like to weigh in. I feel like everybody needs to know how to find community. I'm the director of operations at the Mass Blackout and the Progressive Network. So we are a conglomerate of citizens that gathered together and wanted to do something. We started with 5 organizations. Those are the Progressive Network, the Blackout the System. We have also Fight Against Fascism, American Opposition, and the People's Sick Day. And what we are doing is trying to organize and do an economic blackout all throughout the systems, right? We need to stop feeding the machine, no spending on corporate chains, start supporting our neighbors, small business only, cash only, because we need to reclaim our power. But there is a moment in time where everybody needs answers, but we need unity. We need to be able to know where to go. And so my point to everybody here is that at the Mass Blackout, you can join now. We have an action that we are partnering with the Women's March on January 20th that is going to help us unite even more, because the only way that we are going to get out of this is by doing a general strike. That's bottom line, point, period, blank. Because
if that's the only way, then we're in big trouble, because I don't know of any organization large enough to organize a nationwide general strike that would actually impact the Trump administration.
So let me tell you this. So they're already waiting on us, by the way. So we started on the Mass Blackout on Black Friday to ensure that we were heard. So the White House responded to our movement in a very eloquent way, I would say. But basically what they said was, it was Akash Desai, the White House spokesman. He said, only left-wing groups with the most severe cases of Trump derangement syndrome would think they're heroic for plotting to intentionally hurt small and medium-sized businesses, which could potentially threaten jobs and hurt innocent American employees.
Right.
So that's what they said about our mass blackout. We were able to actually generate a $500 million shortfall on their sales. They actually did a $12.3 billion projection on their sales, and they only did less than that. Corporations. The corporations that were gearing on. Well, it's a whole list of people who did the blackout. I'm sorry, the Black Friday and the Cyber Monday. We partnered with WeAm buying it. Right now, we are over 100 grassroots organizations.
Oh yeah.
That we are linking together, and so basically, what I'm here is to let people know. Please join the fight and go to themassblackout.com, because that's where you're going to find out our new initiative that we are trying to have people link up. This is a moment where people need answers, and this is a way to do it. We are not the only way that we're going to get this done, but there is one of many, right?
Yeah, I got it.
So I just want to just make sure that you
I wish you the best, Axel.
Go there.
Good luck. Good luck. 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. 10 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Monica in Chireno, Texas. Hey, Monica, what's up?
Hey, you are an expert on trying to find out what the truth is. I'm really concerned because in the state of Texas, Abbott has turned over all of the voter registration records to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I saw that in the news this morning.
Yep. And Trump, is demanding all of the records from every state.
That's right. We're resisting here in Oregon, and he's suing us.
Yep. So my gut says, and what do I know? I'm a conspiracy theorist. My gut says that Elon Musk found something that he can link together in the system. But,
perhaps Social Security records.
Yeah. And
he
Social
stole all those.
Security are on all of those voter registration records. At least the last 4 digits are. So somebody's got to do a lot of research here.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the only weapon we have to get him out of office.
I agree, and he is doing he and his billionaire buddies are doing everything they can to rig the 2026 elections. They're purging people from voting rolls like nobody's business right now. It's going to get really, really disgusting this fall. I guarantee it. Monica, thank you for the call, and thanks for pointing that out. Rob in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, Rob, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. So I have a critical question for the upcoming elections. The Democrats, and I'm hoping they will capture a filibuster-proof majority. I think we should be aiming high. Let's say they get the majority or higher. Is there any way that they can cut off all funding for ICE? the $75 billion that's been appropriated. Is there a way that they can bring up a vote and just cut it off, hopefully a veto-proof,
If they had a filibuster-proof majority, yes. You simply pass a law that just reverses the funding for ICE. But that's not going to happen. There's not going to be a filibuster-proof. I mean, the question is, are we going to hit 51%? Are we going to hit, 51 senators, so that we can have the Senate start investigating things or, back up an impeachment or whatever, start holding this administration to account. And that's even going to be tenuous. I mean, it's going to be a real challenge. And Musk and the other right-wing billionaires are preparing to pour literally billions of dollars into this fall's elections.
So my follow-up question is: should that be a motivating factor for the Democratic Party to say, "Hey, get enough of us in here so we can reverse this monstrosity, this draconian government, this authoritarian government"? And I think we have to go big in what we're trying to achieve, instead of saying we're just saving health care or something like that. Those are all important things. But if we want our democracy back, we're going to have to do the big things, right? So I'm hoping that, and I'm going to write to my congressman, to my senator, and whoever I can, because as the Black Eagle used to say, what are you going to do about it? So, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be giving money to these people. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, Joe Madison, my old dear friend who's no longer with us. Thank you, Rob. Always nice to hear about Joe. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Well, I can't understand this whole oil thing in Venezuela. When they first started to attack Venezuela, I thought they were going to go for the gold, because Venezuela has $1.4 trillion in gold that is unmined because their equipment is, like their oil structure is. And instead, he's going for oil without consulting with the oil companies. I know he was, at the time, he said he was doing it for drugs or whatever, but to do this work and then come to the oil companies and ask them if they want it is ridiculous, because the price of oil is not worth drilling if it goes below $60 a barrel.
Right, 61 actually is the threshold, and it's at what, 59 right now?
I'm not sure, but
it's right in that neighborhood gold, anyway. Yeah.
I brought in a gold coin. It didn't have any antique value or anything. It was 1 ounce, and I got a check for $4,470 the other day. So I would bet on gold before I would bet on oil.
Yeah. That's an interesting theory. I continue to think that Trump was presented with an opportunity to take out Maduro, and he wanted to do it just because he could, getting to play toy soldier and all that kind of stuff. And that when he said that he was going to take the oil, and when he said that he was going to run the country, that those were completely off the top of his head at that press conference. He just made that stuff up in real time. And ever since then, his administration has been pedaling as fast as they can and as hard as they can to try to turn it into a reality as if it was a plan. It was obviously not a plan. Obviously, the beginning and end of everything that they were going to do is what George Herbert Walker Bush did in Panama with Manuel Noriega, which is just capture the bad guy, And
you, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you remember when he was going after those boats, he said each boat would save 50,000 lives from overdose. Well, we only had 100,000 people die last year from overdose, and he's done 11 of these boats. So that's,
Yeah, it's just like his cutting drug costs by 400%, which means that on a $100 pill, the drug company would have to pay you $300 to take it home. Trump has a very loose connection to reality, and particularly to math. Bizarrely. Yeah. Bill, thanks for the call. It's nice hearing from you. I appreciate it. On the other side of the break, how the U.S. Army used to talk about fascism. And Republicans are finally pushing back against Donald Trump. This is actually a very big deal. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
say fight back!
Today is Can We All Be Feminists? It's a collection of essays edited by Jane Eric Udori. This first chapter, or first essay, is from Charlotte Shane. It's called No Wave Feminism. If you feel like feminism is failing you, you're not alone. I sometimes have the impression that I'm as thoroughly feminist as I am thoroughly human. That feminism is as intrinsic to my contribution to my constitution as my skeleton is to my body. But in my 35 years, I've struggled with or outright rejected feminism on several occasions. First, as an ignorant adolescent, what do women need feminism for if they already got the vote? Then, as a sex worker who saw how regularly and even gleefully feminists stoked the public's long-standing antipathy toward professionally sexual women. And now again, as someone moving even further into the far left, who cannot abide the forms of feminism that embrace and are complicit with the worst aspects of liberalism. The more I learn about the intersecting oppressive forces that continue to shape the Western world, colonialism, patriarchy, capitalism, xenophobia, and racism, and the network of cruel social machinery to which these systems give rise, incarceration, crippling debt, disenfranchisement, deportation, and so on, the less sense it makes to use gender as the primary lens through which to regard human-engineered suffering. Feminism doesn't feel like the sharpest weapon to wield against white supremacy or border policing, for instance, or even the best tool with which to approach basic civic concerns like vibrant schools. That's not because those issues don't impact women. Obviously, they directly and indirectly impact many, but they don't necessarily impact women more or in dramatically different ways than they do men. In other words, the most significant challenges these issues present aren't tethered to one's sex, and so prioritizing gender above other aspects of identity limits one's realm of ethical responses. Here's an example. American prisons often keep female prisoners shackled while they give birth. There are variations on the theme. Some women are shackled during labor, some are unshackled, but then shackled again almost immediately afterward, and almost all are shackled while heavily pregnant. There's some variation of what shackling entails, too. It can mean being cuffed at the wrists or at the ankles, or both, or cuffed to a hospital bed or chained at the waist. Articulating these details makes the sadism even starker. A class action federal lawsuit in 2017 alleged more than 40 women at the Milwaukee County Jail suffered this horror. It was preceded by lawsuits in 2014 and 2016 against that same jail for similar practice. But the appalling practice is hardly confined to one city or one state. In 2015, New York prisons were found to be shackling prisoners in labor in spite of a state law that made it illegal to do so. And according to a 2016 report by the Prison Birth Project and Prisoners' Legal Services of Massachusetts, jails and prisons in Massachusetts were guilty of similar violations. Most feminists probably agree that this is a feminist issue. The topic accordingly receives coverage on feminist websites and sometimes in women's magazines. But does a feminist obligation to attend to the rights of the imprisoned extend only as far as pregnancy and labor? Or is it a feminist issue when a non-pregnant woman is shackled? Or when she is caged for years and exploited for her labor, denied face-to-face visits from loved ones, held captive in a compound in the name of, quote, justice? If the answer to these questions is yes, then it is also a feminist issue. Then is it also a feminist issue when men are shackled during various health emergencies, seizures, say? In 2014, a male inmate in Colorado died after undergoing several seizures while in restraints and receiving no medical treatment. Is it a feminist issue when incarcerated men are denied the right to visit with family or exploited for their labor? Is it a feminist issue when so many men are raped while in prison? Or does feminism's responsibility begin and end with gender-based mistreatment? The feminists hired by prominent media outlets often advocate for measures that would result in higher levels of incarceration. They write op-eds in favor of further criminalization around sex work and call for longer prison sentences for men convicted of assault, which we've known for decades is not necessarily synonymous with men who committed the crime. They also disturbingly relish the theater of sentencing, like that enacted by Judge Rosemary Aquilina, who told serial sexual abuser Larry Nassar that if she could, she would allow some or many people to do to him what he did to others. So sexual violation is an atrocity unless it happens to the right person. They capitalize on women's justified fear and anger around mistreatment by men to shore up the status quo, to suggest that our current problems are not the result of fundamentally unjust institutions, but rather institutions that are only incidentally sexist. That means that those same institutions could become less so with the right adjustments, like more draconian sentencing for crimes against women, or more female judges. But the prison system is racist and brutal by design, not by accident or mismanagement, just as the court system regularly fails the most vulnerable because it was built to protect the powerful. The challenge of the 21st century is not to demand equal opportunity to participate in the machinery of oppression, revolutionary thinker Angela Davis has written. Rather, it is to identify and dismantle those structures. Yet leveraging our existing legal system for criminalization remains the go-to strategy for most feminists when it comes to dealing with objectionable behavior. The book, Can We All Be Feminists?
We say fight back!
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the third hour of our program. So to start out with credit where credit's due, I got this from Heather Cox Richardson, who has one of the finest newsletters on Substack. She's a historian, a well-known, world-famous historian. And heathercoxrichardson.substack.com is her Substack newsletter. And this is, I think, really important stuff. I'm old enough to remember some of this stuff, some of these documents that it was called the Department of War during World War II, that they produced, making their way into our school. You know, seeing these things in elementary school in the 1950s, in the mid-1950s. So anyhow, what she points out is starting in 1943, the War Department published a series of pamphlets for mostly enlisted men, you know, for the U.S. Army personnel in the European theater. They were called Army Talks. And by the way, I've quoted from these things before. I used to have a collection of these. It's someplace floating around someplace here in the office, or in the studio, but it's been a couple of years since I read from them. So let me just share. This is from the March 24th, 1945 Army Talks newsletter that went out to everybody in the European theater, all the soldiers, and it was the topic was fascism. And everything I'm saying here is I'm quoting from the U.S. Army. You're away from home, separated from your families, no longer at a civilian job or at school, and many of you are risking your very lives because of a thing called fascism. So what is fascism? Fascism is not the easiest thing to analyze, nor, once in power, is it easy to destroy. It is important for our future and that of the world that as many of us as possible understand the causes and practices of fascism in order to combat it. Fascism is government by the few and for the few. The objective is seizure and control of the economic, political, social, and cultural life of the state. The people run democratic governments, but fascist governments run the people. The basic principles of democracy stand in the way of their desires. Hence, democracy must go! Exclamation mark. Anyone who's not a member of their inner gang has to do what he's told. They permit no civil liberties, no equality before the law. Fascism treats women as mere breeders. Children, kitchen, and the church was the Nazi slogan for women. Again, this is the U.S. Army publishing this. Fascists make their own rules and change them when they choose. They maintain themselves in power by the use of force, combined with propaganda based on primitive ideas of blood and race, by skillful manipulation of fear and hate, and by a false promise of security. Their propaganda glorifies war and insists it is smart and realistic to be pitiless and violent. Fascists understood the fundamental principle of democracy, faith in the common sense of the common people, was the direct opposite of the fascist principle of rule by the elite few. Again, quoting from the U.S. Army, 1943. So fascists fought democracy. They played political, religious, social, and economic groups against each other and seized power while these groups struggled. The pamphlet warned, quote, "We once laughed Hitler off as a harmless little clown with a funny mustache." And indeed, the U.S. has experienced sorry instances of mob sadism, lynchings, vigilantism, terror, and suppression of civil liberties. We have had our hooded gangs, Black Legions, silver shirts, and racial and religious bigots. All of them, in the name of Americanism, have used undemocratic methods and doctrines which can be properly identified as fascist. They will try to gain power under the guise of super-patriotism and super-Americanism. And they will use three techniques. First, they would pit religious, racial, and economic groups against one another to break down national unity. Part of that effort to divide and conquer will be a well-planned hate campaign against minority races, religions, and other groups. Second, they would deny any need for international cooperation because that would fly in the face of their insistence that their supporters are better than anyone else. In place of international cooperation, the Army wrote, the fascists seek to substitute a perverted sort of ultranationalism, which tells their people that they are the only people in the world who count. With this goes hatred and suspicion toward the people of all other nations. And third, fascists would insist that, quote, the world has but two choices, either fascism or communism. And they label as communism or communists everyone who refuses to support them. It is vitally important, the Army wrote, to learn to spot native fascists. Even though they adopt names and slogans with popular appeal, drape themselves in the American flag, and attempt to carry out their program in the name of democracy, of the democracy they are trying to destroy. You get this in 1943, the U.S. Army published a pamphlet basically saying that the America First movement is a fascist movement. They didn't name America First, but it's obvious, who they're talking about. The only way to stop the rise of fascism in the United States, the U.S. Army told our soldiers in 1943, quote, is by making our democracy work and by actively cooperating to preserve world peace and security. In the midst of the insecurity of the modern world, the hatred at the root of fascism fulfills a triple mission. By dividing people, it weakens democracy. By getting men to hate rather than to think, it prevents them from seeking the real cause and a democratic solution to their problems. And by falsely promising prosperity, it lures people to embrace its security. Fascism, the U.S. Department of War warned our soldiers in the spring of 1943, fascism thrives on indifference and ignorance. It requires being alert and on guard against the infringement not only of our own freedom, but the freedom of every American. If we permit discrimination, prejudice, or hate to rob anyone of his democratic rights, our own freedom and all democracy is threatened. And this is exactly what's going on right now. We are now seeing with, with ICE and now these recruiting efforts by ICE. This is nuts. There's a new thing. We'll have our home again. We will have our home again. Joinice.gov. Join.ice.gov. This was just tweeted out by the Department of Homeland Security. We will have our home again. Now, this is the great, Rachel Bitecofer is writing about this over on her Substack newsletter. And she says, this is not a metaphor, nor is it, and it's not policy language, it's a statement of purpose. This is the great replacement theory being put into operation by ICE, saying that, international Jewish conspiracy funded a program to put black and brown people in the place of white people in the United States, and we are reversing that. I mean, we will have our home again, Rachel Bitecofer writes, is the emotional core of great replacement ideology, a white nationalist belief system that frames demographic change as dispossession and recasts our nation as something that's been stolen and must be taken back. This is why in Charlottesville they were chanting, Jews will not replace us. They didn't mean that they would be replaced by Jewish people. They meant that Jewish people were funding a program to replace white people with black and brown people. That's the great replacement theory. That's the thing that is animating this administration. This is the core of J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller and Donald Trump's philosophy. I mean, keep in mind, Donald Trump and his father were busted by the federal government back in the day for refusing to rent to black people. This is fascism. And the great replacement theory is the rationale for fascism. And it's extraordinarily dangerous and extraordinarily destructive. Meanwhile, the Daily Signal writes, America needs more masculinity. And Republicans are turning on Trump. This, I think, is the most interesting development. And I'll share that with you on the other side of this break. It's 15 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann program.
Speaking the truth, the multinational corporations and billionaires would really rather you didn't know. I'll be right back. And welcome back. Mary in Mill Creek, Washington. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
Well, hello. I got a couple of things I'll talk to you about. Okay. So first thing is I was listening to, all of this stuff going on in Minnesota, which is where I grew up. And I thought, my God, these ICE officers, they're incapable of empathy. And I thought, well, shit, that's what I swore. That's what,
I'm sorry, Mary, I've got to drop you now. You can't use that kind of language on the air. And my apologies to anybody who might have been offended by that. Let's see here. Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, I heard your thing, or I saw in your thing about this sheriff in Philadelphia that was going to make sure that any ICE person that broke the law would be arrested by her.
Right.
And the thing is, she had no reason to even speak that. She's the sheriff. She's not the police chief, as stated. And the police chief was furious when he said that. And he wrote a letter. Said, here's what he wrote. I'll just give you one sentence here. That said, to clarify, he said, let me be clear. The city of Philadelphia is policed by the Philadelphia Police Department, not the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And see, this is the kind of, and she is just, to me, I live right outside of Philadelphia. And she's in a sheriff's office. She's a loudmouth. She speaks before she knows anything.
She's an elected official, right?
Yeah, she's elected. But she's an inflammatory person that speaks before she knows anything. She just wanted to, I guess, get her name known. And this is the kind of inflammatory stuff that starts problems. Like in Philadelphia, we don't have any problems with ICE. Let me tell you what the police person also said about ICE. He says, we recognize that ICE agents are coming under attack, and we are charged as law enforcement to protect everyone. And this was in December. Now, this is, and ICE is making arrests outside of the courthouses. They're making arrests in offices. I know for a fact because I live here. They're making a lot of arrests, and you don't see any of this hysterical problems out here, Tom. You don't see people on the street screaming and hollering because ICE is doing their job, and there's no inflammatory stuff by our officials. Our governor is not an inflammatory person, Shapiro. And I think that if you have reasonable people, you don't have these problems. And this person, this sheriff, is not reasonable. And the fact that you picked this up, without, anybody clarifying it in the news just shows how this kind of stuff just runs rampant. And it's the same type of information or misinformation about.
But Tom, what do you do when you've got ICE agents kicking indoors without warrants, tasing people who ask to see a warrant, and shooting people in the face as they're trying to drive away?
We don't have that out here, Tom.
Well, excuse me, Tom, but out here in Pennsylvania is still part of the United States of America.
Yes, it is.
You do have that.
Okay. Well, then you would prosecute, but it's not as frequent as you would say. I mean, this whole thing about ICE agent is going after people that are American citizens. What?
They did. In Chicago, they went door to door in this apartment building. It was low income, so it was almost all black and brown people. They kicked in every single door. A number of them stole a lot of electronic equipment, and they ended up not indicting a single person. I mean, it was completely in violation of the Constitution. Tom, I got to run. Thanks for the call. 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Well, welcome back. 20 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. George in Cripple Creek, Virginia. Hey, George, what's up?
Hey, Tom. How you doing? Yeah, a couple of things. Interesting article in Pravda today. Nikolai Toporin is the director of the Center for European Information. And he's saying that, Greenland is in Trump's crosshairs, why the American leader is romping up rhetoric around the island, and the U.S. is unlikely to seize Greenland by force, as this would lead to an open conflict with Europe. And he's positing that Trump will use political and economic carrots to gain control of Greenland, like, forcing Denmark to grant us territorial leases, or separating Greenland from Denmark and offering Greenland some sort of associative status.
We already have a treaty that lets us establish military bases.
Yeah, exactly, right, that already does that.
It's weird.
And I see that Germany is proposing that NATO station troops in Greenland under something called Arctic Shield or something like that.
Yeah, they sent a destroyer out there, I saw 2 days ago in the press.
Yeah, but they're saying, station NATO troops in Greenland that would both deter Trump from invading and give Greenland a credible defense against Russian and Chinese incursions and things like that.
Yeah, interesting.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I'd hate to see a internal conflict when NATO would have to invoke Article 5 against U.S. invading Greenland.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it would be the end of the NATO alliance, which is exactly what Putin wants, and I think what Trump wants as well. So,
yeah, he's made that clear. Yeah. And one other quick thing, you were mentioning those army pamphlets from 1943. Did you ever see the series, the War Department and Hollywood film series, Why We Fight?
Yes.
That offered an excellent explanation why we were fighting Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, and imperialist Japan.
Yeah.
I think you can see it on YouTube. Maybe, it might be on the History Channel, but it's around. If you
No, they're on YouTube, and one of the best ones is where this guy is standing watching a demagogue who's basically preaching racial hatred, from a street corner in
I
Philadelphia.
remember that sequence.
Yeah, and the army fellow walks up next to him and says, "Well, this is how fascists talk," and it's very informative.
Exactly right.
That's a good one.
You couldn't beat that. That was plain and to the point.
Yeah, there you go. George, thank you. Thanks for the call and thanks for the information. It's always nice hearing from you.
And keep up the good work, Tom, and enjoy listening to you on free speech.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Just a couple of quick things here. These are headlines from right-wing media from just the last 24 hours. The Daily Signal: America needs more masculinity. The Federalist: Democrats want anti-ICE protesters to die so they can protect their fraudulent patronage with riots. From PJ Media: it's never a stretch to believe that a Democrat wants to kill a cop. This is what's happening in the mainstream right-wing media. Fox News: the left seeks martyrs to fuel anti-Trump uprising. The Federalists: when can we uproot domestic terror cells attacking law enforcement? Pretty amazing, huh? Meanwhile, Trump's steep budget cuts to science. The Trump administration had cut our science funding by, over $100 billion. And, well, actually, no, it wasn't over $100 billion. It was from $198 billion down to $154 billion. It's a 22% cut. It's the largest cut in federal spending on science since World War II. And, of course, that was to fund the war effort. The Senate Appropriations Committee, though, released a bipartisan package of bills this week. That would be yesterday, actually, or today, that set aside roughly $188 billion. So they're saying, okay, we're only going to go along with about a 4% cut in science funding. And Trump is still proposing that there be more bigger cuts. He wants the budget slashed to $3.9 billion from $8.8 billion, a 56% cut. The Senate countered with a reduction from 8.8 down to 8.75, or less than 1%. So I mean, it's from 56% cut that Trump wants to less than 1% that the Senate is giving him. Patty Murray, a Washington State senator, or the senator from Washington State, said Democrats fought to protect investments that matter, and this package rejects Trump's push to let our competitors do laps around us. And Susan Collins of Maine, who is very concerned about her reelection, says the package is, quote, a fiscally responsible move that will, quote, spur scientific research necessary to maintain U.S. competitiveness. On Thursday, the House voted to approve the Senate package, and Congress is, they're trying to get these spending bills passed before the end of the month when, all the funding expires. So far, the House's moves on the science bill add up to an estimated $185 billion. The Senate is $188 billion, which means that either one is going to have to adopt the budget of the other in order to get, it passed with a single House vote, because both houses now have voted, to advance science funding in the United States, but to slightly different amounts. Or they're going to have to go to reconciliation. They're going to have to work out the details in a conference committee, and then have a brand new vote in both the House and Senate. But it'll be interesting to see how the Trump administration responds to this. I think that their rescissions, their withholding funds that Congress has appropriated is just nakedly unconstitutional, illegal. But so far, they've been able to get away with it. So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's 27 minutes past the hour. John in Minneapolis up next.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with you.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from The Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. This is from the introduction. It starts with love, exchange, fellowship. It ends as it begins, in motion, in between various modes of being and belonging, and on the way to new economies of giving, taking, being with and for. And it ends with a ride in a Buick Skylark on a way to another place altogether. Surprising, perhaps, after we have engaged dispossession, debt, dislocation, and violence, but not surprising when you have understood that the projects of fugitive planning and black study are mostly about reaching out to find connection. They are about making common cause with the brokenness of being, a brokenness, I would venture to say, that is also blackness, that remains blackness, and will, despite all, remain broken because this book is not a prescription for repair. If we do not seek to fix what has been broken, then what? How do we resolve to live with brokenness, with being broke, which is also what Moten and Harney called debt? Well, given that debt is sometimes a history of giving, at other times a history of taking, at all times a history of capitalism, and given that debt also signifies a promise of ownership but never delivers on that promise, we have to understand that debt is something that cannot be paid off. Debt, as Harney puts it, presumes a kind of individualized realization to a naturalized economy that is predicated upon exploitation. Can we have, he asks, another sense of what is owed that does not presume a nexus of activities like recognition and acknowledgement, payment and gratitude? Can debt become a principle of elaboration? Moten links economic debt to the brokenness of being in the interview with Stefan Shukatis, who he acknowledges that some debts should be paid and that much is owed, especially to black people, by white people. And yet he says, I also know that it is, that what it is that is supposed to be repaired is irreparable. It can't be repaired. The only thing we can do is tear this stuff down completely and build something new, end of quote. The Undercommons do not come to pay their debts, to repair what has been broken, to fix what has been undone. If you want to know what the Undercommons wants, what Moten and Harney want, what black people, indigenous people, queers, and poor people want, what we, the we who cohabit in the space of the Undercommons want, it is this. We cannot be satisfied with the recognition and acknowledgement generated by the very system that denies A, that anything was ever broken, and B, that we deserve to be the broken part. So we refuse to ask for recognition, and instead we want to take apart, dismantle, tear down that structure right now. That right now limits our ability to find each other, to see beyond it, and to access the places that we know live outside its walls. We cannot say what new structures will replace the ones we live with yet, because once we have torn stuff down, we will inevitably see more and see differently and feel a new sense of wanting and being and becoming. What we want after the break will be different from what we think we want before the break, and both are necessarily different from the desires that issue from being in the dark. Let's come at this by another path. In the melancholic and visionary 2009 film version of Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, 1963, Max, the small seeker who leaves his room, his home, his family to find the world beyond, finds a world of lost and lonely beasts, and they promptly make him their king. Max is the first king the wild things have had, whom they did not eat, and who did not, in turn, try to eat them. And the beasts are the first grown things that Max has met, who want his opinion, his judgment, and his rule. Max's power is that he is small while they are big. He promises the beasts that he has no plans to eat them, and that this is more than anyone has ever promised them. He promises them that he will find ways through and around and will slip through the cracks and re-crack the cracks if they fill up. He promises to keep sadness at bay and to make the world with the wild creatures that roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. That Max fails to make the wild things happy or to save them or to make the world with them is less important than the fact that he found them and he recognized in them the end of something and potentially the path to an alternative in his world, or an alternative to his world, excuse me. The wild things were not the utopian creatures of fairy tales. They were the rejected and lost subjects of the world Max had left behind. And because he shuttles between the Oedipal land where his mother rules and the ruined world of the wild, he knows the parameters of the real. He sees what is included and what is left out, and he is now able to set sail for another place, a place that is neither the home he left nor the home to which he wants to return. Moten and Harney want to gesture to another place, a wild place that is not simply the leftover space that limbs real and regulated zones of polite society. Rather, it is a wild place that continuously produces its own unregulated wilderness. The zone we enter through Moten and Harney is ongoing and exists in the present, and as Harney puts it, some kind of demand is already being enacted, fulfilled in the call itself. While describing the riots of London in 2011, Harney suggests that the riots and insurrections do not separate out the request, the demand, and the call. Rather, they enact the one in the other. The book is The Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study.
Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government, military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
This isn't your house, Mr. Trump. It never was. It's ours, the people's. He rolled in with a wrecking ball of gold. Said this old house needed his brand new mold. Tore down the east wing while the flag still flew. 0 cost to taxpayers. Yeah, we heard that too. He calls it his ballroom, his legacy stage. But the walls belong to every generation, every age. We watch the jackhammer singing through our history's page. This is our house, not his
Our White House. Indeed, it is our White House. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's up?
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick. I just wanted to provide some context for the Powderhorn neighborhood where Renee Good was murdered. Mm-hmm. It's a very creative place, very tolerant. It's about 48 to 54% white, and then it's, various ethnic groups or various, African American, Dakota Indian, I would say some Somali probably. I might be forgetting other people, but people are very interesting there. I mean, it's amazing how different it is from this rather boring suburban-like neighborhood that I live in Minneapolis. I go down there if I want to kind of hang out and talk to people. Minneapolis has never really allowed the inner core of the city to decay. And yes, we're actually very rational and intelligent. There are only about 6 million of us. I include myself in that, but I've only lived here 32 years. I've lived many other places, and I'm not from here. But once they get their back up, watch out, because generally speaking, they work hard it's like I always say, put your nose to the grindstone, shut up, because I talk a lot. That's why I call into these programs too. And I'm just amazed at what they get done and how well everything runs.
Did you see that Puppy Killer Noam said that she's sending 1,000 more troops, 1,000 more ICE people into Minneapolis?
South Dakota is a little bit jealous, so is North Dakota. And she has such, I'm a medical person. She has this, flat effect. And I talked with my brother in Colorado, and he said, that's because maybe if she smiled, her face would fall off. But I think
you in South
she
Park.
is, right, like in South Park. It's really funny.
It's a joke on all the plastic surgery she's had.
Yeah, she just looks like straight ahead. There's no emotion. I don't know. It's part and parcel of their, administration.
It could be the Botox. I mean, she's got a bad case of Mar-a-Lago face, but I'm more. Frankly, I don't care what she looks like. I'm concerned about the fact that she's openly promoting violence against nonviolent people, violence against Americans by authorities.
On the inside, as well as on the outside, in a sense, I think. That is her character, and I think that it's horrible. Mostly we work hard here. People are out in the street, and particularly in that neighborhood, to support their neighbors. These are the people they live with, the other 50%. And they, I don't care if they're undocumented. They do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the way that Minnesotans feel, and I've talked to quite a few of them, it's like they're destroying our way of life.
Yeah.
And, when you do that...
Nice, you mean?
Yeah. Well, what I mean is we have had a successful life here. It created a very successful way of living. Yes, we have our problems. African Americans are not necessarily in the same position as we are. Neither are a lot of the Dakota Indians and other groups. But we constantly try to progress. And it's from the get-go. Like, I don't know if you know Brenda Ullin, if you want to write, and Eric Utney is her grandson. And so we have this legacy of progressivism because people came here from countries that were ruled by the aristocracy and the Lutheran Church and et cetera, and also the Catholic Church. And when they got here, a lot of them said, hey, we don't have to listen to that anymore. Right. We can think for ourselves.
Yeah, no,
and
I get it.
I really love living. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Michigan. It's also part of kind of that Midwest, culture, as it were.
Yes.
And I've spent a lot of time in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and it feels very much like certainly northern Michigan. Very, my grandparents lived in New Wego, Michigan. Up near Grand Rapids, and it's all, it's very much like that. John, I do have to move along, but thank you for the call. Cindy in Menominee, Wisconsin, speaking of. Hey, Cindy, what's up?
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just had a couple of comments regarding Kristi Noem and Jonathan Ross, the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple of interviews with her over the weekend, and I think Jake Tapper actually did kind of a better job than he normally does.
Yes.
Speaking with her, but so I've seen reports where that Jonathan Ross is a veteran, and he's been with them since 2013.
Right.
So he's not one of those.
He's not a Yahoo they just picked up off the street. He's been with them over a decade.
Right.
Yeah.
Not one of their untrained recruits out there.
Right.
And I just think
Which is even more chilling, actually.
Yes. And I thought it was really weird how. Like those two guys come out of the truck, and he just kind of comes out of nowhere by himself,
Mm-hmm.
And and she's
He's
sitting
the
there. She's got those guys and all that. But anyway, it was just really weird. And then, of course, his demeanor afterwards, that was all very strange. He just walks off.
Yeah. After calling her
and
an
they
effing
generally
bitch.
see. Right. Yeah. And it just seemed like, it's the whole thing. Just how did he walk off? And apparently he got out of Minnesota really quick and everything and all that.
Yeah,
but,
it was 6 minutes before she got any medical assistance because they were keeping a physician away from her. This is just so wrong on every level. It's just astonishing to me that the administration, the Trump administration, this Trump regime is still saying that this was a justified killing, and that the right-wing media is not just saying it's a justified killing. They're like, we want more of this. And it's like this bloodlust is just awful. Cindy,
right? It's like they're setting the scene, and also, with her sending, another 1,000 of them in the city, I'm really worried that it's going to escalate into something really
Here's what
bad.
Trump wants. He wants a war. He wants to find a city. He's been, he tried it here in Portland. He tried it in San Francisco. He tried it in Los Angeles. Now it's Minnesota. Now it's Minneapolis. He wants somebody, and he's going to get it. By the way, because they're, we've got these black bloc crazies who believe that if you just burn down the system, something great will replace it, the old-fashioned kind of 1918 Russian anarchists. They are here in America. You had the guy, just yesterday or day before yesterday, who went to one of the big demonstrations in Minneapolis and just walked in, burned an American flag, and walked away just to provide a video shot for Fox News, basically. He was a right-winger, pretending to be a left-winger. But what Trump wants is he wants somebody to shoot at an ICE officer. He wants somebody to be injured or killed so that he can invoke the Insurrection Act and he can lock down this country. That's going to be the next step. And pouring 1,000 more ICE officers into Minneapolis is going to raise the probability of that. And one of these days, they're going to kick in somebody's door without a warrant, like they just did this morning, and like they're doing all over Minneapolis and St. Paul right now, illegally. They're going to kick in somebody's door without a warrant, and that person is going to be there with a gun and try to defend their own home. And that person may ultimately win the court case, but odds are they'll be immediately killed. But Trump will have his martyr. He's looking for a martyr. Cindy, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Pardon me. With more of your calls in just a minute. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news. Back with more of your calls on the other side of this. And welcome back. Tony in Long Island, New York. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how are you doing today?
Good. What's up?
My biggest concern right now regarding Greenland, and a lot of people haven't touched upon this, is that if we were to, say, put our boots on the ground and physically invade Greenland, not only would that be the end of NATO, we would become a pariah state, but also Europe could also call on their notes against the United States, basically bankrupting this country. The dollar could crash. The stock market could crash.
You mean sell their treasuries?
Exactly.
I think they're holding a little less than $1 trillion. We've got $38 trillion in treasuries that are outstanding, so I doubt it would have the impact that you're describing, Tony. I mean, it would hurt. It would drive up interest rates probably by a point or two, but I don't think it would produce the crash.
Well, I thought that also it would put them in a position where they could align themselves possibly with Canada and with other countries, because normally what happens is when smaller countries are being threatened by larger countries, they find an ally to protect themselves.
That's right.
with.
They form coalitions. And I think you've seen that happening right now. I mean, Canada actually entered into a mutual defense treaty with Denmark just in the last couple of weeks. By way of standing up to Trump. I mean, Canada is getting ready. They're getting ready for an invasion. Mark Carney knows that Trump's a madman, and Scheinfeld, down or Scheinbaum. What's her name? The president of Mexico, Scheinbaum. Yeah. She's getting ready too in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm curious as to who is she going to be aligning herself with, because I'm not sure whether or not they have the firepower to combat.
They have a very large army, but they don't have the kind of sophisticated military that we have. I have a dear friend of mine from my teenage years who has who lives in Michigan in the summers and lives in Mexico in the winters, and has for a couple of decades. And I got a long letter from him a couple of days ago, or email from him, telling me about how they're making it, just in the last couple of weeks, the government policy on Americans living there, staying there for extended periods of time is changing, and they're starting to make it much harder for Americans to do what my friend is doing. He's kind of grandfathered in because he's already got his permission, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, he said that he's thinking of not even going back to Michigan. He's just so horrified by what's happening in the United States.
So you mean the expat community is going to be impacted as well, or is already being impacted? Then, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what would happen then if they forge this alignment and say Mexico, which I'm sure holds some notes from for the Treasury as well as Canada, what if they all align together with the European Union and decided to call in their notes?
The big holder is China, actually.
China is the big one, yeah.
And I think they've got around $2 trillion in debt. And again, that's not enough to crash our economy, but it's enough to cause some real serious problems. But I think China's quite happy with what Trump is doing. I mean, you know, what Trump did with Venezuela, or is in the process of doing with Venezuela, is pretty much exactly what China wants to do with Taiwan. So Trump is giving them the example and arguably the authority to do that. So, and from everything I'm hearing, 2027 is the year that they plan on taking Taiwan, next year.
It makes no sense because we had 17 bases at one time there in Greenland. We closed 16 of them. We could open them
and we can put them back.
To.
We can put them back anytime we want. We have a treaty with them that allows us to do that. Tony, I got to run, but thanks for the call. It's 49 minutes past the hour. Back with you in 1 minute. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. They called it blood libel, what the Germans were doing against the Jews, claiming that they were using the blood of Christian children to make their matzah. We've got a new blood libel now here in the United States. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump lying through their teeth, arguing that black Haitian immigrants to the United States, legal immigrants with green cards in this little town in Ohio, are eating pets. This is another libel that goes way back. In the 1890s, people were claiming German and Dutch immigrants were eating pets. Then they claimed in the 1880s, and actually as recently as last year, a restaurant got shut down in California because of claims that they were serving pets. They weren't. But it was an Asian restaurant. This is just evil stuff, these lies and spreading this kind of hate. And this is now the strategy that the Republicans are using. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com. Hate as a political weapon. Check it out.
Trump walks in like a king without a crown, tearing the pillars of justice down.
51 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Will in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Will, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom.
Hey.
I was listening to the program, and I was kind of compelled to call back. There was a caller about half an hour ago that said he was kind of disappointed that the president was going for Venezuelan oil instead of the gold, which is more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't hear any pushback as such from you.
I think you're mischaracterizing his statement. He wasn't disappointed that we didn't go after the gold. He was surprised that we didn't go after the gold. He was not advocating going after anything in Venezuela, if that's what you're implying, Will.
Okay. All right. Well, then my mistake, because I thought it sounded like, well, we should have gone for the gold instead of the oil because gold is more valuable. He had an ounce.
Yeah, no, what he was saying is if Trump was being strategic, which he's obviously not, he's just being a tool of the fossil fuel industry that gave him, hundreds of millions of dollars to get himself elected to the White House. He's trying to repay that debt. If he had been strategic, the gold would have been a better bet than the oil. I don't know if that's true or not. It's an interesting argument. but you know, it's wrong either way, and we were in agreement on that.
Oh, okay. Okay. My fault then. I thought it was saying.
It's all good, Will.
I say it's not us.
No, it was I forget who it was, but it was a regular caller to the program, and I you know, I know his positions. He was not saying that we should have taken the gold. He was saying that if Trump had any sense about him, he would have done that instead of the oil. Will, thank you for the call. Yeah, thank you. Matt in Chicago. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hi, Tom. This is my first call to you. There's a plethora of conversations going on when I'm listening to this, so I don't know what to comment on, but I do want to comment on this. I'm 68 years old. I marched in the 60s on my dad's shoulders. I'm going to say this real fast. You had a comment on about the white supremacists trying to replace the whites with black and brown people, and I think that's just a false narrative that's been put out because the Jews and the blacks have not had a great relationship, and by their own admission and in their books that they put out. But my point is that I don't think that will ever happen, and I've got Palestinian brothers and sisters that I've gone to college with back on the K-State campus, and I don't see any of them replacing us. No,
the whole Great Replacement theory came out of a book called The Camp of the Saints, and it was written by a French anti-Semite and racist whose name is escaping me at the moment. And this book posited that there was this grand worldwide conspiracy being funded by Jewish people to turn white country, to cripple white countries by bringing in black and brown people and replacing the white power structure with the black and brown power structure. And you know, it's become one of the big flags that are being waved by the racists. And now the language from that book, I mean, the literal words from that book are being quoted, are being used by ICE in their recruiting. So it's quite obvious that what ICE is trying to do is reach out to these white racists who are familiar with Camp of the Saints.
I believe that. Here in Chicago, I just want to say quickly, also, the gentleman caller, it was a few calls back, didn't think that the ICE was causing problems in black and brown communities. But trust me, my nephew was picked up as an American, put in Indiana jail, and after about a month or so of us looking for him, he was just dropped off. No explanation whatsoever. Amazing. And it's happening right now. My little nieces and nephews are going through this right now down in downtown Chicago. So that's not a myth. Yeah. This is happening.
You're absolutely right, man.
But I appreciate it. I want to say I've been listening to you for a long time. This first time I've chimed in, I've got my wife to listen to you later at night when you're on, and she's just intrigued by it. We usually listen to Democracy Now!, but I appreciate you putting it out there. I've gotten a lot of books that you suggested, and I appreciate that you and others like you are on, and so keep doing the good work.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, there are the Turner Diaries and Camp of the Saints are the two Bibles of the white supremacist movement in the United States. And Camp of the Saints came from France. Turner Diaries was written by an American. And both of them, you know, promote this idea that Rich, the international Jew, in quotes, in scare quotes, is, you know, funding this takeover of America by brown and black people. And it's obscene what these people are promoting. Matt, I got to run, but thank you for the call, and thanks for the reality check. I appreciate it. And thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag. You're in. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and to folks around you. Stay safe. And I will catch up with you tomorrow.
Been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
say fight back!